Chapter 1700. More and more holes appeared in the black hole and the aura became more and more chaotic. The giant sword continued to shatter and the fragments were sucked into the black hole, becoming smaller and smaller. Boom! A thunderous sound rang out and a blinding light flashed in the air. Everyone subconsciously closed their eyes. However, when they opened their eyes again, everything had changed. The black hole had disappeared and the ice sword's light was weak. A crack ran through it, and although the ice sword was not destroyed, its vitality had been greatly damaged. Hao Tianwang appeared again, standing next to the ice sword. He looked up at the sky with his mouth wide open. Following his gaze, everyone's mind shook and they were dumbstruck. The sky had collapsed. A corner of the sky had collapsed and a huge hole had appeared. This scene frightened everyone, including Hao Tianwang and Tang Zheng. The two involved had never thought that the exhibition would turn out like this. How could the sky collapse? Hao Tianwang looked at Tang Zheng with fear and said through gritted teeth, "This is all because of you." Even if the other party was killed and a corner of the sky above the imperial city collapsed, this would still be a huge humiliation and scar. It would be a ghastly sight hanging here. Anyone who raised their head would be able to see it. This was truly a slap to his face. Tang Zheng had used up a lot of energy. If Hao Tianwang attacked again, then he would not have enough energy to use the sky swallowing technique. The more this was the case, the more he did not dare to reveal his true situation. He deliberately provoked, "Hao Tianwang, this is just the beginning. My sky swallowing technique is not just for show. It can really swallow the sky." Hao Tianwang did not believe it at first, but now he had no choice but to believe it. Facts spoke louder than words. Wasn't that corner of the sky right in front of him? What should he do? Hao Tianwang began to think. King Wuling and the Imperial Guard also stopped attacking, confronting the four symbols and Azura. King Wuling was not afraid of these two, but his Imperial Guard was not their match. This caused the two sides to be in a stalemate for a long time and there was no clear victor. The scene of the sky collapsing caused both sides to fall into silence. They looked at each other, waiting for their own people to give the order so that they could attack again. However, after waiting for a long time, there was still no order to attack. Tang Zheng and Hao Tianwang looked at each other from a distance. Both of them wanted to kill the other, but neither of them acted rashly. Tang Zheng was deliberately stalling for time. The longer he delayed, the better. Hao Tianwang was afraid of the sky swallowing technique. He did not know that Tang Zheng was temporarily unable to use the sky swallowing technique. Otherwise, he would definitely attack Tang Zheng without hesitation. Suddenly, Tang Zheng heard some movement behind him. It turned out to be Xiaobai. He was overjoyed and shouted, "Master, I did it. Success." Tang Zheng shivered and immediately understood that Xiaobai was talking about persuading Kun Peng. For the time being, he had no energy and mind to care about how Xiaobai did it. He could not wait to order, "Quickly take Kun Peng away." "I won't go. I want to go with Master," Xiaobai said stubbornly. "How can that be? Kun Peng is the most important," Tang Zheng retorted. Xiaobai was unmoved and insisted, "No one can be compared with Master. Master is more important than Kun Peng." After saying that, Xiaobai actually let go of his hand. He held the bloodthirsty scepter with both hands and pointed it at Hao Tianwang from afar. It was as if he was saying that he would rather die in battle than surrender. Hao Tianwang was shocked and his expression changed. This was because he understood the conversation between Xiaobai and Tang Zheng. How could Xiaobai persuade Kun Peng? Wasn't Kun Peng stubborn? What method did Xiaobai use to make Kun Peng change its mind? Hao Tianwang could not figure it out. However, he knew that if he did not act now, it would be too late. Hence he roared, "Kill!" Monstrous killing intent surged out again and engulfed Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng could not block it at all. He could only watch as the ice sword flew towards him. Hao Tianwang was overjoyed. It turned out that Tang Zheng was bluffing and was already an arrow at the end of its flight. He had almost been frightened by him. "Don't even think about hurting my master." The four symbols and Azura roared loudly and rushed towards Tang Zheng without any regard for their own safety. They tried to block the sword for him. However, they were too far away and could not block the sword in time. Hao Tianwang's face revealed a sinister smile. It seemed that he was determined to win this sword. Whoosh! Suddenly, a ray of light covered Tang Zheng. The ice sword pierced the light, but the light did not waver. The ice sword suddenly changed direction and stabbed towards Hao Tianwang, giving him a taste of his own medicine. Hao Tianwang cried out in alarm. The ice sword was fierce, but after all it was his treasure. With a thought, the ice sword's attack disappeared. Looking closely, Xiaobai was already in front of Tang Jing to protect him. As for behind them, it was Kunpeng. The attack just now was Kunpeng's counterattack. It blocked Tang Jing's attack. Kunpeng had such a divine ability. Even Hao Tianwang's attack might not be able to hurt it. Especially now that Hao Tianwang had used up a lot of his power was greatly reduced. It was even more impossible for him to break through Kunpeng's attack. Hao Tianwang was so angry that his whole body trembled. He pointed his sword at Kunpeng and said, "Kunpeng, do you know what you are doing?" Kunpeng's voice rang out. However, it did not ring in their ears. Instead, it rang in everyone's mind. It actually did not need physical contact to be able to communicate with its divine sense. Hao Tianwang, you have already recovered your memory. You have already remembered what you did in the past. Do you think that I will still stay by your side? This sentence caused Hao Tianwang's mind to be greatly shocked. He opened his eyes wide in disbelief and said with a trembling voice, "How did you recover your memory?" "The blood of the royal family can recover my memory. You didn't think of that, right?" The blood of the royal family. Hao Tianwang's pupils shrunk as he stared at Xiaobai's palm. There was no blood on it. If he knew that the blood of the royal family had this kind of effect, Hao Tianwang would definitely not let Xiaobai get close to Kunpeng. Of course, if Tang Jing and Xiaobai knew about this, they would not have gone through such an intense battle and accidentally allowed Kunpeng to recover its memory. Xiaobai proudly raised his hand and said, "Hao Tianwang, you traitor. In the end, you will never understand the power of the royal family." Hao Tianwang coldly snorted and said, "What's so great about the royal family? Back then, weren't they all wiped out by me? Only you are a fish that escaped the net." Xiaobai's eyes burned with anger and said, "You traitors still have the face to mention the past. You swore to be loyal to my father, but you went back on your words and betrayed him. A disloyal and unjust person like you will pay the price one day." "Haha. Price? What right do you have to say this? What can you do to me? I will first kill you, a fish that escaped the net. Then the royal family will completely disappear from the sky." Chapter 1701. Xiaobai retorted in high spirits, "A spent force? Then you should break through the Kunpeng's defense first before you talk big." After saying that, Xiaobai protected Tang Jing and retreated to the Kunpeng's side. Tang Jing looked at the Shura and the 4 symbols that were surrounded and hurriedly shouted, "For symbols, Shura, come back." Hearing that, the 4 symbols and Shura quickly opened up a bloody path and flew towards them. Hao Tianwang said angrily, "Do you really think the Kunpeng can stop me? It was hurt in the battle that year, which means its divine power is not omnipotent." Hao Tianwang raised his ice sword and rushed over aggressively. "Kunpeng, it's up to you." Xiaobai raised his head and shouted. Hua! A ray of light rose from the Kunpeng's body, protecting the 2 of them and the 4 symbols and Shura that were flying over. At this moment, Hao Tianwang had also arrived. The ice sword immediately slashed towards the few of them, but it hit the ray of light. Just like before, there was no earth-shattering momentum and the ice sword flew backwards. Hao Tianwang hurriedly caught the ice sword, but was sent flying by the force of the ice sword flying backwards. Xiaobai and Tang Jing looked at each other and smiled. How can the Kunpeng's divine power be broken through so easily? Let's see what other abilities Hao Tianwang has. Tang Jing's head turned cold. The purpose of this trip was not to kill Hao Tianwang. Even with the Kunpeng they could not do this. Then there was no need to complicate matters. Taking the Kunpeng away was the most important thing. Therefore he whispered to Xiaobai, "Xiaobai, quickly let the Kunpeng leave with us. Leaving this place is the most important thing." Xiaobai immediately accepted the order and said to the Kunpeng with his divine sense, "Kunpeng, let's go." Xiaobai and the Kunpeng already had a mysterious divine sense communication, unlike outsiders who could only passively accept the Kunpeng's communication. Whoosh! The Kunpeng's body lit up. Then the Kunpeng moved. The Sky City also moved. It flew up from the Kunpeng's back and flew towards the 9 heavens. Screams could be heard coming from Sky City. Since the Kunpeng had removed its magical power, the city in the sky could no longer be fixed. "Come, let's go to the back of the Kunpeng." Xiaobai shouted as the four of them flew onto the back of the Kunpeng. They were enveloped by a layer of light, so they didn't have to worry about the enemy's attack. Hao Tianwang was enraged. He pointed his sword at the Kunpeng and yelled, "Stop them! Don't let any of them go." King Wuling understood and immediately ordered everyone to attack. Colorful magic weapons whizzed towards the Kunpeng. However, when the magic weapon met the light on the back of the Kunpeng, the attack disappeared. The magic weapon changed its direction and attacked its master. Some people were not strong enough and were not able to control their own magic treasures in time. They were even killed by their own magic treasures and died on the spot. Everyone was thrown off their feet. It was a mess. King Wuling shouted orders, but he couldn't stop this mess. He was unwilling to give up and attacked the Kunpeng himself. The effect was the same. He couldn't break through the Kunpeng's magical power. The Kunpeng flew into the distance. Its huge body was shrinking bit by bit. However, it was still a huge monster. Hao Tianwang and King Wuling chased after it with their subordinates. They kept roaring and trying to make the Kunpeng stop. Xiaobai looked at this scene coldly and said, "The Kunpeng has been taken over by this traitor for so many years. Now it has finally returned to its rightful owner. The Kunpeng has regained its freedom." Tang Jing said worriedly, "The Kunpeng is a big target. Although it can block their attacks if they keep chasing, when will it end?" Xiaobai had an idea. He smiled mischievously and said, "Master, I know what you're thinking. Then I'll make them unable to chase us." Tang Jing looked at Xiaobai curiously. He didn't know what he meant. Xiaobai didn't explain much. He said to the Kunpeng, "Kunpeng, it's up to you. Make the city in the sky crash." "Yes." The Kunpeng replied calmly. Hao Tianwang and the others chased after it with all their might. However, they couldn't hurt the other party. This made them very frustrated and helpless. Suddenly the sky darkened. Everyone still didn't understand what was going on. They hurriedly looked up. Immediately, pairs of eyes opened wide. They looked at this scene in disbelief. Many people couldn't help but stop in their tracks. They stared at the sky in horror. Their eyes couldn't help but turn dark. Sky City was actually descending rapidly, heading straight for the crowd. Hao Tianwang and King Wuling were also stunned. The city in the sky had been floating in the air since ancient times. There had never been a situation where it fell. What was going on? They scratched their heads but couldn't figure out the reason. The cruel reality didn't allow them to continue thinking. They had to find a way to stop all this. What was the city in the sky? It was the symbol of his power and majesty. It was the result of his painstaking efforts for tens of thousands of years. How could he just let it fall? Hold the city in the sky. Hao Tianwang didn't decline. He flew into the sky and raised his hands forward. The air quickly dropped to the freezing point and condensed into pieces. Two huge palms appeared in the air and held the city in the sky. Tang Jing was also stunned by this scene. He didn't understand and hurriedly asked, "Xiaobai, what's going on?" Xiaobai said mysteriously, "Master, all of this is the credit of the Kunpeng." You definitely can't imagine that apart from the Kunpeng's ability to give someone a taste of their own medicine, it also has another incredible ability. Tang Jing was dumbfounded. He anxiously urged, "Don't be mysterious. Tell me what divine ability it is." "When we first came to the sky beyond heaven, didn't you see many mountains floating in the air? Also, the city in the sky and those floating mountains are actually based on the same principle. They all have a mysterious connection with the Kunpeng and are controlled by the Kunpeng." "Oh." Tang Jing stared at the Kunpeng's back and was speechless for a long time. This divine ability was indeed too heaven-defying. No wonder the city in the sky suddenly fell. The Kunpeng has recovered its memory and this divine ability, so it can easily control the city in the sky. Xiaobai added, "Although Hao Tianwang has imprisoned the Kunpeng for countless years, he doesn't know this secret at all." Tang Jing looked in the direction of the city in the sky and asked curiously, "Can Hao Tianwang hold the city in the sky?" Xiaobai revealed a playful smile and said, "He can try and see how long he can last." Tang Jing understood. No wonder Xiaobai was so confident that he could get rid of the pursuers. With the city in the sky falling, how could Hao Tianwang have the mood to chase after them? Hao Tianwang really didn't have the mood to chase after them. Blue veins appeared on his forehead and he gritted his teeth. His hands seemed to be crushed by the city in the sky. Cracks had already appeared on the giant ice palm in the air, as if it would collapse at any moment. "What are you waiting for? Come and help me." Hao Tianwang roared at King Wuling in annoyance. King Wuling seemed to wake up from a dream and also joined the team holding the city in the sky. Chapter 1702. Pairs of hands were holding up the Sky City, and it seemed that the Sky City was really being held up. However, when many people secretly felt lucky, everything changed again. Sky City slowly fell down again and their arms felt like they were about to be crushed. The huge palm condensed by Hao Tianwang was torn apart, turned into ice and fell from the sky. Without the power of Hao Tianwang, how could the others hold up the Sky City? Whoosh! Almost instantly, the speed of the Sky City's fall increased greatly, and many people's arms were broken on the spot. Screams and exclamations sounded one after another. If this continued, these people would definitely be crushed into meat patties by the Sky City. Hao Tianwang gritted his teeth and shouted, "Retreat." With an order, he took the lead and flew into the distance. The others did not dare to stay and flew in all directions in a daze, not wanting to be crushed into meat patties by the Sky City. Without the power to lift, the Sky City was like a wild horse out of control, and like a meteorite falling from the sky, it fell to the ground with a whoosh. The people on the Sky City were shocked and screamed again, finally realizing that a great danger was coming. Even if they were cultivators, if they fell with the Sky City, the huge impact was enough to destroy their internal organs. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Figures flew up from the Sky City one by one, standing in the air watching the Sky City fall with pale faces. The people in the Imperial City had long been frightened, and after coming to their senses, they fled in all directions. On the contrary, outside the Imperial City, the people at the lowest level watched this scene in high spirits. They never thought that they would be able to see such a scene in their lifetime. Boom! There was a loud noise and the earth shook. The Sky City hit the ground like a meteorite. The earth seemed to have an earthquake and dust was raised all over the sky. A huge pit appeared in the Imperial City, and even the places that were not hit quickly collapsed and fell apart. The Sky City was destroyed and so was the Imperial City. Hao Tianwang's base camp, which he had operated for so many years, was destroyed. Hao Tianwang's dignity was destroyed along with this. Hao Tianwang stood in the air, his face alternating between red and white. It was extremely terrifying as he stared fixedly at this scene. His mood was extremely complicated. This was the most painful Waterloo of his life. After this battle, everything he had built up before collapsed with a loud bang. He wanted to kill. He looked up to the sky and let out a long howl. The air in all directions quickly condensed and soon turned into ice. Those who were too close to him were frozen and died on the spot. Everyone retreated in panic. Even King Wuling did not dare to get involved. He was afraid that it would be too late. No one dared to dissuade him. They were all trembling with fear. They were all fully aware of the fury in Hao Tianwang's heart. Someone stealthily looked in the direction where the Kuan Ping flew away. Unknowingly, the huge body of the Kuan Ping had disappeared. However, King Wuling knew very well that the Kuan Ping must have become smaller, so he couldn't find it at all. Perhaps they were hiding in some corner watching the scene with schadenfreude. Indeed, this was the case. Above the 9 heavens, in a huge cloud, the somersault cloud was hiding there. The few of them stood on the cloud and looked down at everything below. The Kuan Ping had changed greatly. It was like a bird held in Xiao Bai's hand. Xiao Bai couldn't hide his surprise and said, "Master, this is not a destructive blow to this group of traitors, but it will definitely make them unable to recover in a short period of time." Tang Jing nodded in agreement. After this battle, Hao Tianwang's vitality will be greatly damaged. He won't have the energy to target us at all. We can also temporarily recuperate and gradually grow stronger. Xiao Bai rolled his eyes and said worriedly, "What if Hao Tianwang is too angry and leads his troops to attack us? What should we do?" Tang Jing chuckled and said, "If he really does that, then he must be out of his mind. This time it's not as simple as destroying the Sky City and the Imperial City. It's a fatal blow to his dignity. If he attacks us without caring about anything, do you believe that his backyard will be on fire?" Xiao Bai's eyes lit up and he seemed to be deep in thought. Tang Jing added, "In fact, Hao Tianwang's rule is not as firm as we thought. Perhaps because of his guilty conscience, he has been implementing high-pressure policies. The ordinary residents of Sky Beyond are living in an abyss of suffering. They only fear Hao Tianwang and don't dare to fight back. It's different now. This destructive blow will definitely spread throughout Sky Beyond. Those who have long been dissatisfied with Hao Tianwang will definitely take advantage of the situation. Many people will also know that the royal family has returned and is powerful. Perhaps many people will even seek refuge with you. Hao Tianwang must reorganize his backyard and rebuild his prestige. Only then will he have the time to deal with us. After listening to Tang Zheng's analysis, Xiao Bai was deep in thought. Finally he came to a realization and exclaimed excitedly, "Master is really amazing. Your analysis is so thorough. This is really an unexpected surprise. I didn't expect that in order to find the Kuanping he would give Hao Tianwang such a heavy blow." As he spoke, he looked down at the Kuanping and couldn't help but have a strong hope for it. "Let's go, no need to look. Let's go back to the barbarian land first." Tang Jing rode the somersault cloud, mixed in with other clouds and quietly left. Wherever they passed, many people stopped and looked in the direction of the Sky Palace City. The Sky City was suspended in mid-air. Even if it was far away, it could be seen clearly. Whenever someone had the thought of rebelling, they would look up at the Sky City in the distance and suppress this thought. They never expected that the Sky City would crash in front of everyone's eyes. This great news spread quickly and spread to even farther places in Sky Beyond. The thought of rebelling in people's hearts unconsciously ignited again. This time it was no longer suppressed. Instead, it spread rapidly like a spark starting a prairie fire. The elites of Sky Beyond were basically concentrated in the Imperial City in Sky Beyond, but it didn't mean that there were no elite masters among the people. The saying that masters were among the people was not only applicable to the human world, but also to Sky Beyond. Many elite masters hid among the people, unwilling to work for Hao Tianwang. These elites began to contact each other, and the fire of revolution quietly burned. Tang Jing witnessed all this, but he wasn't surprised. This was because, in the history of the human world, this scene had played out countless times. Xiao Bai was seeing this for the first time in his life. He couldn't help but wave his fists excitedly. This was Sky Beyond, his home, and it was quietly changing. "Master, when I go back, I'll join forces with these people. There's strength in numbers. If we fight against Hao Tianwang together, our chances of winning will be higher." Xiao Bai said excitedly. "You can do that, but you also have to be careful. The people are mixed in with the honest folk, and there are also many who have bad intentions. These people must be strictly guarded against and can't mix into our team. Otherwise, there will be endless troubles in the future." Tang Jing gave Xiao Bai a dose of precaution. Xiao Bai didn't think so much. He nodded thoughtfully and said, "Thank you for your advice, Master. With Master in charge, the rascals won't be able to succeed." Tang Jing shook his head and patted Xiao Bai's shoulder, saying, "Xiao Bai, this is your home. You are their emperor. You have to stand at the forefront." Ah. Chapter 1703. Xiao Bai came back to his senses and asked blankly, "Master, what do you mean? You fought for all of this, so of course you're the one standing at the front." Tang Jing knew Xiao Bai's intentions and said patiently, "Xiao Bai, Sky Beyond Heaven is your home. These people trust you the most, do you understand?" "But I believe in you, Master," Xiao Bai said stubbornly. Tang Jing shook his head and said, "Wait until Sky Beyond Heaven stabilizes, then I will leave. After that, everything will depend on you." Xiao Bai's expression darkened. He was not afraid of fighting alone, but was used to having Tang Jing by his side. He said worriedly, "Master, without you, how can we defeat that traitor?" Tang Jing encouraged him. "Xiao Bai, you have to believe in yourself. You are far stronger than you think. You will definitely defeat Hao Tianwang. You have to have confidence." Xiao Bai hung his head dejectedly. "Xiao Bai, pull yourself together. You are a descendant of the imperial family, the emperor of countless people in Sky Beyond Heaven. Do you understand? Do you want to disappoint me?" Tang Zheng's expression darkened as he sternly reprimanded him. Xiao Bai raised his head and bit his lips. Seeing Tang Zheng's encouraging expression, confidence slowly spread from the bottom of his heart. Finally, he nodded heavily and said, "Master, I will not disappoint you." Tang Jing smiled with gratification. When the somersault cloud arrived at the wildlands, many people came forward to welcome it. They saw the familiar somersault cloud from afar. They were both expectant and worried. afraid that something bad would happen. Yi Dingdang Wu and Lu Qingmei stood at the front of the group. The three of them were the most worried about Tang Zheng. Although they knew that Tang Zheng's cultivation was strong, the enemy was also strong. Success or failure was completely unpredictable. In mid-air, Tang Zheng saw them. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and soared into the air. He descended from the sky and gently landed in front of the three people. The three of them excitedly rushed forward and hung onto Tang Zheng's body. "Ah!" Tang Zheng laughed loudly and hugged the three of them tightly. He patted their backs and comforted them. "I'm an unkillable cockroach. Why are you so worried about me?" Yi Dingdang angrily punched him and said, "You're not worried at all. You made the three of us so worried that we couldn't sleep." "Yes, it's my fault. This time is too special. I'll definitely bring you guys along next time." Tang Zheng quickly surrendered. The three of them rolled their eyes at him and said, "That's more like it." After pausing for a moment, he hurriedly asked, "What's the outcome?" The somersault cloud landed on the savage lands. Xiao Bai, the four symbols and the Shura all disembarked. They immediately attracted the attention of everyone. Not many people noticed that Xiao Bai was carrying the Kun Ping. That was because it was too different from the image in everyone's mind. It was too easy to overlook. The Grandmaster hurriedly went to Xiao Bai's side and sized him up. He didn't find any injuries. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. "Grandmaster, don't worry. I'm fine." Xiao Bai smiled. Seeing that the four of them had returned safely, everyone was concerned about the success or failure of the mission. Yi Dingdang repeatedly asked. Tang Zheng didn't keep them in suspense. He pointed at the Kun Peng and said, "Isn't this the result?" Swoosh. Immediately, all eyes focused on the Kun Peng. Not knowing what was going on, Yi Dingdang asked doubtfully, "Is this Xiao Bai's new pet?" "Pet?" Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai laughed at the same time. Tang Zheng pointed at the Kun Peng and said, "Everyone look carefully. What exactly is it?" The Grandmaster cried out in surprise, "Kun Peng." "Pa, Grandmaster has sharp eyes." He guessed right. It is the Kun Peng. Xiao Bai couldn't hide his excitement as he said. Everyone was shocked. They had seen the Kun Peng's huge body. It was completely different from this little thing. How could this be the Kun Peng? But when they looked carefully, other than the size, it was very similar to the Kun Peng. It really is the Kun Peng. Everyone turned pale with fright as they gradually accepted this reality. How did the Kun Peng become like this? Everyone had this question in their hearts. Tang Jing signaled to Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai understood and explained, "The Kun Peng can change its size." The Grandmaster asked doubtfully, "But in my memory the Kun Peng can't change its size." That was in the past. After the Kun Peng was damaged and was repaired by Hao Tianwang, it had the ability to change its size. Everyone suddenly understood. Tian Chanzi was more interested in the experience of this trip and quickly asked about it. Xiao Bai had already been instructed by Tang Jing and slowly explained. Although his words were simple, it quickly attracted the attention of the crowd. Everyone was overwhelmed with emotions and their hearts were undulating. How much courage and strength was required to take the risk alone but still obtain a complete victory? Everyone could understand without even thinking about it. Especially the leaders of the righteous faction. They didn't know the purpose of Tang Zheng's trip. Only then did they know that they were pulling the tooth from the tiger's mouth. They actually took the Kun Peng from Hao Tianwang. How difficult was this? They were very clear about this since they were chased by Hao Tianwang's subordinates all these years. But this mission was still successful. They didn't know what words to use to describe it. They could only praise it in their hearts. A leader asked curiously, "What's so special about the Kun Peng that you have to take the risk?" Xiao Bai explained, "The Kun Peng is the foundation of the Outland. It's as important as the Tree of Life to the human world." At the mention of the Tree of Life, all the righteous faction suddenly understood. They might have heard of the legend of the Tree of Life. It was the key to the survival of a world. Suddenly, the eyes of the people looking at the Kun Peng changed drastically. There was a trace of awe in their eyes. "What's the use of taking back the Kun Peng?" someone asked. Xiao Bai turned to look at Tang Jing. Tang Jing nodded at Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai understood and patted the back of the Kun Peng. He said, "Let's wait and see." On the way back, the two had already discussed the next action. Since these people asked, they might as well let everyone see and use this to completely intimidate them. The Kuan Ping had already been instructed. It rose into the air and flew towards the sky. At the same time it rapidly changed. When it rose into the air, it had already turned into its real body. One couldn't see the end of it. It made people admire it. But many people didn't know what was going on. They looked at the Kuan Ping blankly. Only a few people had seen the Tree of Life turn the desert into an oasis. So their hearts were filled with anticipation. Many pairs of eyes were fixed on the Kuan Ping. A ray of light appeared on the Kuan Ping's body. This ray of light wasn't very strong, but it was full of vitality. The ray of light fell from the sky and turned into countless raindrops, sprinkling on the wilderness. Chapter 1704. The sky full of light fell on the hard rocks of the barbarian land. Everyone looked at all this blankly, not knowing what would happen. Suddenly a green grew out of the barbarian land. A blade of grass. Everyone exclaimed in disbelief. It was not surprising that a blade of grass grew in other places, but this was the barbarian land. Everything in the barbarian land could not grow. This was a well-known fact. It was said that there was once a powerful master who tried to change all this. In the end he exhausted all his power and failed. Since then no one dared to overestimate themselves. The scene in front of them gave everyone a profound lesson. It turned out that the barbarian land was not really a place where nothing could grow. It was just that the person who could do this was not an ordinary person. The rock. Everyone raised their heads to look at it, and were deeply shocked by its small demonstration of strength. The light completely merged into the bare rocks and a little bit of green grew on the rocks. Gradually more and more people exclaimed. Because there were not only blades of grass growing, but also other plants growing. The vitality gathered in the barbarian land, and the momentum became greater and greater, making the barbarian land look completely new. Many people were so excited that they danced. Wild Dog was one of them. He jumped up and down and was overflowing with excitement. Everyone knew very well that they would live in the barbarian land for a long time. The barbarian land full of vitality was much better than the barbarian land full of death. Would this place become a paradise or a home? Many people could not help but have this idea. Several leaders looked at Xiao Bai and Tang Jing in awe. They had snatched food from the tiger's mouth. They had taken such an important rock from Hao Tianwang, which was enough to prove their strength. But when they thought of this, many people felt gloomy and worried. They asked nervously, "The rock is so important and you have destroyed the imperial city and the city in the sky. What if Hao Tianwang leads troops to attack us? What should we do? We are still so weak. Can we resist?" Little White was full of confidence and repeated the situation and interests that Tang Jing had analyzed one by one. Several leaders fell into silence. In the end they had to admit that Xiao Bai was right. However, they were skeptical about the so-called rebellion in the outer heavens. After all, they had not experienced nearly 100 years of history in the human world. It was hard to imagine how powerful the combined forces of the weak could be. Xiao Bai made a solemn vow and they couldn't find a reason to refute it. They could only bitterly accept this reality. The appearance of the Kuan Ping cheered up everyone in the savage land. Their nervous minds became excited. The future was becoming brighter and brighter. For the next few days Tang Jing focused on teaching Xiao Bai about celestial chess. Once he left, the heavenly chess would be taken over by Xiao Bai. Unfortunately, they would not be able to absorb the vast and mighty power of the stars in the heavenly chess. In the past few days Tang Jing had absorbed quite a bit of star energy. The power of the stars in the heavens beyond heaven was actually denser than the power of the mortal world, which benefited him greatly. His power had increased tremendously. He had already been at the 7th grade of the Mahayana realm for some time, but he did not expect to break through too quickly. After all, the higher the cultivation, the harder it was to break through. Unless one had a great opportunity like Xiao Bai, they would not be able to make such a huge breakthrough in such a short period of time. Tang Jing was calm, he was not in a hurry. In addition, his pure yang force was only temporarily under control and was not truly dissolved. If he broke through his cultivation too quickly, the pure yang force would explosively increase. Whether or not the current balance would be maintained would be a problem. Xiao Bai's comprehension ability was extremely strong. Although it had only been a few days, he had already gradually comprehended many of the essence of the heavenly chess. Although he was unable to set up the heavenly chess by himself, it was more than enough to control the existing heavenly chess. Xiao Bai gradually understood the heavenly chess, and only then did he truly realize the extraordinariness and greatness of the heavenly chess, and could not help but have greater confidence in the future. Before leaving, Tang Jing found Yuan. He decided to leave the witch clan in the sky beyond heaven, as there were even more challenges and opportunities here. Although it was filled with danger, it was of great use to the growth of the witch clan. Speaking of which, the relationship between the witch clan and Xiao Bai was not shallow, so it was reasonable for them to stay by Xiao Bai's side. After listening to Tang Zheng's arrangements, although Yi Yuan wanted to stay by Tang Zheng's side and work for him, he was a righteous person and understood Tang Zheng's good intentions, so he naturally did not object. As a result, there were a lot of people who came this time, but there were very few people who returned. Only Yi Dingdang, the 3 girls, the Azura and the 4 symbols followed Tang Jing back to the human world. Before they left, the wilderness was filled with people. In just a few days, trees had already grown out of the wilderness. It was believed that before long, the wilderness would definitely turn into a lush forest. In addition, the Kuan Ping used its sacred art and obtained a few floating mountain peaks from somewhere. They floated above the wilderness, giving off a new atmosphere that was full of life. When everyone heard that Tang Zheng was going to leave, they all wanted to see how they would pass through the spatial gate. Many righteous path cultivators were expelled to the sky beyond heaven by the Great Array back then. Although they had personally experienced passing through the spatial gate, it was still in a hurry and they did not understand the profoundness of passing through the spatial gate. In addition, most of them were panicking, so how could they have the mood to observe? Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang stepped on the somersault cloud and slowly flew up into the sky, waving goodbye one after another. Pairs of eyes were focused on them. Xiao Bai couldn't help but shout, "Master, you must come back as soon as possible." Tang Jing nodded slightly, his eyes filled with encouragement. Xiao Bai was well aware of Tang Zheng's intentions and said firmly, "Master, don't worry, I will definitely protect everything. When you return in the future, our team will be even stronger." In the past few days, Xiao Bai had sent out many spies to take the initiative to investigate the situation in the sky beyond heaven. It seemed that as Tang Jing had predicted, there was an undercurrent in the sky beyond heaven. It seemed that some people could not sit still and wanted to raise the flag of rebellion against Hao Tianwang. Their series of actions in the imperial city had spread to every corner of the sky beyond heaven, deeply shocking everyone. The spies took the opportunity to spread the news about the wilderness, letting everyone know that the former imperial family had returned and how powerful they were. What happened in the imperial city was the best evidence. Some people were already on their way to the wilderness as if they wanted to seek refuge there. Everything was difficult at the beginning, but as long as the first shot was fired, the rest would follow naturally. Tian Chanzi's long-cherished wish had been fulfilled. He spent all his time thinking about how to make Kingsaman stronger. After the decline of Kingsaman day by day, many of the martial arts in the sect were lost. Tian Chanzi focused on organizing the great martial arts of his sect from 1,000 years ago, and then imparted them to his fellow disciples without holding anything back. He looked at Tang Jing with a complicated expression and said loudly, "Tang Jing, go back and tell my disciple Shirshir to practice hard. The next time she comes to the sky beyond heaven, I will specially hold a grand ceremony for her to return to the sect. Also, take care of yourself, especially your pure yang energy. Young man, you have a lot of energy. Let the women around you share some of it." Tang Jing could not help but laugh. Yi Dingdang and the other 2 glared at Heaven Monk in shame and anger and urged, "Don't listen to this old fellow's nonsense, let's hurry up and leave, otherwise who knows what kind of absurd words he will say later." Whoosh. Chapter 1705. This was the first time Yi Dingdang, Wu and Lu Qingmei had personally passed through the spatial door. Last time they were in Sumeru world and did not have the opportunity to experience all of this. Today was very different. When they entered the spatial door, their eyes widened. However, the surroundings were dark and they could not see anything. They could not help but be disappointed. Before they could experience any extraordinary mysteries, their eyes suddenly opened up and they returned to the human world. Above the 9th heaven, a biting cold wind blew against their cheeks. Only then did they wake up. When they turned around, the spatial door had already closed. Yi Dingdang pouted and said faintly, "Why is it so fast? I didn't feel anything." Wu and Lu Qingmei nodded at the same time, their faces filled with regret. Tang Jing laughed loudly, "Passing through space is just that. It is not as complicated and mysterious as you think. Lu Qingmei said, that is for you. For us or others, this is an insurmountable gap. There will be a day when you can freely pass through the spatial door. Tang Jing said with certainty. The place where they returned to the human world was actually not within their country. When they looked down, they actually passed through to another country. Whoosh! A fighter jet flew in front of them, startling them. Immediately after, Yi Dingdang excitedly jumped on the somersault cloud and said, "Wow, it's a fighter jet. Let's compete with it and see who is stronger." Tang Jing helplessly rolled his eyes at her. She really wanted to see the world in chaos. Moreover, what was the point of this kind of adult bullying child game? Somersault cloud, get rid of this iron lump. With a command, the somersault cloud increased its speed. Like a ray of light, it flew away from the fighter jet and disappeared from the radar in the blink of an eye. The pilot watched this scene with a pale face. His jaw was about to drop. This little farce only added a bit of fun. Yi Dingdang was not tired of it and excitedly said, "Next time I want to go to sky beyond sky. Although it was boring when I passed through, there are many unknowns. It is too interesting." Tang Jing acted as if he did not hear. Lu Qingmei, on the other hand, couldn't take her eyes off the scenery below. Looking down from the sky, there was a kind of beauty that ordinary people couldn't appreciate. "We seem to have arrived at Anne's country," Lu Qingmei suddenly said. Yi Dingdang exclaimed in shock, "And I haven't seen her for a long time. She actually returned to China alone." As soon as he finished speaking, 3 pairs of eyes looked at Tang Jing at the same time. Tang Jing was baffled. He rubbed his nose and said, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Marshall, who had been silent all this time, said, "And leaving, doesn't that mean that there's no hope for her to stay by your side?" Tang Jing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "What does that have to do with me? It would be strange if it had nothing to do with you," Yi Dingdang said mercilessly. Lu Qingmei and Marshall nodded together. Tang Jing might as well not say anything. No matter what, it was his fault. Yi Dingdang rolled her eyes and said mischievously, "Why don't we go down and meet Anne? Speaking of which, I haven't been to her country yet." Lu Qingmei and Marshall hurriedly nodded in agreement. 3 against 1, Tang Jing didn't have the chance to refute and could only suppress the cloud. Many people on the ground saw a white cloud descend from the sky, and all of them opened their eyes wide in shock looking at this miracle. After all, foreign countries were not like foreign countries. Most people did not know of the existence of cultivators and were shocked by this scene. Especially when they saw 4 people jump down from the white cloud. Some of them even prostrated themselves on the ground, calling out to God and kowtowing. Yi Dingdang covered her mouth and snickered, saying, "This group of foreigners treat us as immortals. How interesting. Let's go, don't scare them." Tang Jing pulled the 3 of them, and in the blink of an eye, they disappeared in front of everyone. Everything was like a dream. The few of them did not barge into the royal castle. Although they could quietly enter the castle, it would cause trouble for the royal family. Both sides were not enemies, so there was no need to do so. When they arrived at the castle and was already waiting for them, she opened her eyes wide in surprise and stared straight at Tang Jing, not concealing her feelings in the slightest, and was too happy. She was a princess, and who knew how many people wanted to get close to her. These people were all elites. However, goods would be lost if they were compared, and people would die if they were compared. These people compared to Tang Jing, one was on the ground and the other was in the sky. There was simply no comparison. And had originally planned to forget about Tang Jing, because she had no hope of having a place by Tang Jing's side. She did not expect that after returning home, this kind of longing would not weaken, but instead become more and more intense. Especially under the pursuit of so many people, this kind of feeling was particularly strong. Even so, she resisted the idea of looking for Tang Jing. After all, she was a princess and still had her own pride. She had tried her best, but in the end, it ended in failure. She really wanted to climb up and try again, but in front of Tang Jing she did not have the courage. All of this was because Tang Jing was walking higher and higher, and the distance between them was getting farther and farther. She no longer dared to try again, and was pleasantly surprised as she went up to welcome them. When the 3 of them landed, the royal family had already known through special channels, and specially dressed up and came early to welcome them. She was a little nervous, not knowing if they would come to the castle. Now it seemed that her wish had come true. They really did come. Yi Dingdang pushed Tang Jing and said, "Her Highness the Princess is here to welcome you. She's not welcoming me alone. We're all foils, you're the main character." Yi Dingdang laughed mischievously. In the past she had strictly prevented other women from getting close to Tang Jing, but it seemed that ever since his robbery power erupted last time, she had become much more open-minded. Wu and Lu Qingmei also looked at him with burning eyes. Seeing and walking in front of him, Tang Jing could not remain indifferent. After all, this was her castle. With so many pairs of eyes watching, if he did not give her face, it would be too unreasonable. Tang Jing smiled faintly, and long time no see, and could not hold it in and excitedly hugged Tang Jing, saying excitedly, "It's great that you can come." Immediately the other three girls looked at Tang Jing with more and more thought-provoking gazes. Tang Jing could not help but roll his eyes, and sensed the gazes of the other three girls and reluctantly left Tang Jing's embrace. She then politely hugged the three of them and said, "Welcome to my home. Your home is so big." Yi Dingdang pointed to the magnificent castle and said, and was used to it and said, "It's just a little bigger." Everyone knew that this was a modest way of saying it. The royal castle had a lot of history and had witnessed the rise and fall of the royal family. It was like a silent old man. "My royal father and mother have prepared a sumptuous banquet to welcome your arrival," and led the few of them into the castle. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1706. At the end of the banquet, the host and guests enjoyed themselves to the fullest, and reluctantly left Tang Jing and took the three girls to visit the castle. The king and Tang Jing came to the highest point of the castle and looked at the night view of the city. There were not many tall buildings in this city. Instead, there were many short old buildings which were completely different from the tall buildings in the country. The king observed the side of Tang Jing's face. Speaking from the bottom of his heart, when they first met, he never would have thought that this young man would come to this step today. "Your Excellency, the other heads of the royal families of this continent are already on their way and will arrive tomorrow. I know that you like to keep a low profile, so this meeting will be kept secret," the king said. He was the king, but he called Tang Jing "Your Excellency," which was enough to show the status of Tang Jing. Tang Jing was shocked. He was just passing by, but there was actually such a big commotion. "There is no need for this," the king said with a pleasant expression. "The news of your appearance has already spread throughout this continent through various secret channels, so they can't just sit and watch. During this period of time, everyone saw what happened to your country. That's why they couldn't wait to come here." Tang Jing asked suspiciously, "What does this have to do with them?" The king smiled bitterly, thinking that you really don't know, or are you just pretending to be confused? But he explained earnestly, "Your Excellency and your subordinates are too powerful, enough to subvert them, so..." The king didn't finish, but his meaning was self-evident. Tang Jing suddenly realized that these royal families were worried that he would kill his way into their country and subvert their rule. No wonder they couldn't wait to come here. Were they here to test his strength? Or were they here to ask for peace? Wasn't this like the ancient times when all the countries came to court? The king's thoughts were far more complicated than Tang Jing's, but he was also secretly glad that he had a good daughter who had formed a relationship with Tang Jing early on. Although they didn't have a good relationship, their relationship was at least closer than the other royal families. This gave them an opportunity, so they weren't as anxious as the other royal families. Now his status was rising and he was in the limelight among the many royal families. Those who didn't get along with him usually had to be on good terms with him. The king enjoyed it too much. They're really worried for nothing. Tang Jing's lips curled into a mocking smile. The king's heart skipped a beat and he asked, "Don't tell me you don't have any plans for this continent?" Thoughts? What was so good about this continent? Could it be compared to the heavenly realm? Of course not. Since that was the case, he might as well properly develop the heaven realm. That was his foundation and he could control it. The king could not read Tang Jing's mind and looked at him anxiously. Tang Jing was not in a hurry to explain everything. He deliberately mystified and said, "This continent is actually not bad." The king's heart skipped a beat as he looked at Tang Jing in horror, subconsciously thinking that he had some ideas about this continent. If someone else had said this, or if it had been said in the past, he would definitely have scoffed. This was simply condescending. However, the more he learned about the situation, the more he understood that Tang Jing was not being arrogant. He really did have the ability to do so. The king said anxiously. Then what are you going to do? That will depend on what they do tomorrow. Tang Jing said mysteriously. The king's heart sank, but he kept comforting himself. According to the relationship between and Tang Jing, he probably wouldn't do anything to this country, right? Although he said this, the king still did not have any confidence. He waited until everyone else returned to their rooms to rest before calling Anne alone to the study. Anne was immersed in joy and did not notice her father's worry. She casually asked, "What's the matter? My dear daughter, do you know what Tang Jing thinks about our country?" The king asked directly. Anne was confused and asked, "What does he think about our country?" "My silly daughter." The king lovingly stroked her head. His heart moved and he simply changed the topic, saying, "Is it really impossible between you and him?" Anne's face flushed red as she stammered, "I don't know." "You're my daughter. What are you being so shy about? This is not your style. If you like someone, then do your best to chase him." "I don't believe that my woman can't chase him," the king encouraged. And guiltily said, "But he is too outstanding. The women around him are also outstanding." "Daughter, you are also very outstanding." And raised her head and looked at the king with uncertainty and asked, "Do I really have a chance?" "Of course you have a chance." And seemed to have gathered her fighting spirit again. The king remembered something that was occasionally mentioned at the dinner table and warned, "Don't forget about your master, Tian Chanzi." From what they said, Tian Chanzi went to another world. Although I don't really understand the meaning of this sentence, you have a reason to go back. You haven't finished your studies yet, so how can you leave your master? This way you can continue to stay by his side and avoid any awkwardness. Anne's heart moved and she was eager to give it a try. "I will make it clear to Tang Jing. You don't need to appear. I guarantee that he won't be able to find a reason to decline," the king said confidently. And didn't refuse. The corners of her mouth hooked up into a smile. In the darkness of the night it was captivating. The next day the sun was high in the sky. Several luxurious planes landed at the airport. Then one by one the luxurious motorcade drove into the royal castle. Although the king said that he would keep a low profile, how could the royal family stay low profile when traveling? The news of the royal family gathering seemed to have grown wings and flew into the ears of many people. Combined with the news of Tang Jing descending from the sky yesterday, how could the various powers not understand that they were here for Tang Jing? Immediately, everyone was filled with curiosity about this meeting. They didn't know what kind of sparks would be created or what kind of conclusion would be made. Would the situation of the world change because of this? In the castle, Tang Jing sat firmly in his chair. The reception was handled by the king. In any case, he wasn't familiar with these royal family members. This time, most of the people who came had prominent statuses. With a single order, some corner of the world would tremble. Some of the guests were the king himself, while some were core members of the royal family. Without exception, no one dared to look down on them. Tang Jing sat firmly on the fishing platform. He looked at the endless stream of people with an expressionless face. And sat beside him. She leaned over and said intimately, "Don't look at them on the surface. In fact, they are very guilty." Tang Jing's mouth twitched. He squeezed out a wry smile. And didn't hold back at all. She hit the nail on the head. The other royal family members looked at the intimate appearance of Tang Jing and Anne and couldn't help but cast envious gazes. They weren't envious of Tang Jing's good luck with women. Instead, they were envious of Anne for being so close to Tang Jing. The pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first, making countless people envious. To read a novel, please visit Chapter 1707. Yi Dingdang and the other two girls did not come out. They hid in the shadows and watched the grand scene with interest. Of course, most of their attention was on Tang Jing and Anne. Seeing the two of them whispering with their heads down, Yi Dingdang asked, "Don't you think the two of them are a good match?" Lu Qingmei and Marshall stared at her at the same time with a strange expression. "Why are you looking at me like that? I was just casually saying it." Yi Dingdang shrugged and lightly said, "Look at the members of the royal family. They must be thinking the same thing. They think the two of them are a couple." Marshall coldly said, "Yi Dingding, don't tell me you don't think there are enough women around him?" Yi Dingding laughed, "Of course I don't. It's best if I monopolize him." "Your appetite is not small," Marshall said. Yi Dingdang was not embarrassed at all and straightforwardly said, "Don't tell me you haven't thought about it. It's just that we are forced by reality and can't do it." Lu Qingmei faintly sighed, speechless. Yi Dingdang mischievously stared at Lu Qingmei and said, "Teacher Lu, do you think I'm right?" Seeing her point out the teacher's identity, Lu Qingmei's ears turned red. She angrily said, "Didn't I tell you not to call me teacher? A teacher for a day, a teacher for life." Yi Dingdang deliberately teased. Lu Qingmei knew that Yi Dingdang had a sharp tongue, so she did not bother with her. Not to mention the three girls teasing each other, the royal families of the various countries also gathered together and whispered to each other. Some of them even boldly went to greet Tang Jing. Tang Jing was neither cold nor warm as he responded with a few words. Luckily, he had Annie by his side to act as the introducer as she enthusiastically introduced the newcomer. All the members of the imperial family took their seats. Anne's father also sat on his throne. He took a deep look at Tang Jing and acted according to the countermeasures discussed last night. Only to hear him say with full vigor, "In this beautiful season, all of you have come from afar. On behalf of the royal family, I sincerely welcome all of you to this beautiful country." A long official speech was delivered, but almost no one was in the mood to listen. They were either openly or covertly looking at Tang Jing. Tang Jing was as still as a pine tree, and the old king also acted as if he did not see it. Anyway, he finished his long-winded speech, paused for a moment and said, "Everyone is very clear about the purpose of your visit. I can't make a decision on this matter, so I need everyone to gather together and brainstorm." No one said anything, but all eyes were focused on Tang Jing. The old king was well aware. He smiled and said, "Of course, this matter is not completely up to all of you to decide. The main decision lies in the hands of the esteemed Mr. Tang Jing." The old king spoke bluntly and did not leave any face for the royal family. When the royal family heard this, although their faces were bright red with embarrassment, they could not refute. The old king made an inviting gesture to Tang Jing and said, "I know everyone is eager to know the answer, so now Mr. Tang Jing will speak." Clap, clap, clap. Applause rang out like a tide. Tang Jing did not move, nor did he wait for the applause to stop. He said in a clear voice, "If I were to attack your country, how confident are you that you can stop me?" The moment he opened his mouth, it was earth-shattering and heaven-shattering. He wouldn't rest until he shocked everyone to death, causing everyone's hearts to rise. The old king and Anne looked at each other. They did not expect Tang Jing to be so straightforward and direct, catching everyone off guard. Actually, Tang Jing did not want to waste time. Instead of fighting and scheming with the royal family, it was better to go home and spend time with his family and loved ones. The royal family members looked at each other, not knowing how to answer for a moment. They were all very particular about being reserved. One sentence would be broken into 10 sentences, making it ambiguous and difficult for others to figure it out. Tang Jing did not rush them. He crossed his legs and leaned back comfortably in his chair. And the others looked at him with shining eyes. Just one sentence had stunned everyone. Who else in the world could do this? No head of state could do this. "Mr. Tang Jing, you are too arrogant and conceited. You're looking down on us." Someone stood up and retorted. Tang Jing smiled faintly and said, "Since you think I am arrogant, you can leave on your own. No one will stop you." That person's expression froze. His aura disappeared and he sat back down dispiritedly. The others looked at each other, not daring to show any disrespect. They all asked the old king for help. After all, he was the host and had a close relationship with Tang Jing. Everyone hoped that he would put in a good word for them on account of their past relationship. The old king obviously knew what these people were thinking, but he looked down as if he did not see them at all. This made everyone even more depressed. "Are you really going to attack our country?" Someone could not help but ask. "If someone is disobedient, there is no harm in beating them up." Tang Jing said lightly. "If we join forces, you may not be able to defeat us with your strength." Someone said unconvinced. They were really suppressed by Tang Jing's aura and wanted to turn the tables. Tang Jing chuckled and encouraged, "Then you can give it a try. In the future we will see who wins and who loses." They were the royal family. They had a large family business with hundreds of thousands of years of history. How could they dare to bet with Tang Jing? None of them dared to make such a huge bet. With just a few words, all the royal family members were speechless. They looked at each other in dismay, not knowing what to do. When Yi Dingdang and the other two saw this scene, their gazes became infatuated. This was their lover who was able to fight against the royal family by himself. Where could they find this kind of man? It was a great honor for them to be able to accompany him. Who knew how many women in the world were willing to do this but did not have the chance? What do you think the royal family will do? Yi Dingdang asked curiously. Lu Qingmei analyzed. They will definitely compromise. This is their only choice. Wu nodded in agreement. In the face of absolute strength, any identity, schemes and methods are all useless and useless. As if to confirm her words, a member of the royal family said, "Then what are you going to do? Or do you have any conditions?" On the negotiating table everything can be discussed. Tang Jing straightened his body and leaned forward slightly. A majestic aura gushed out from him, causing everyone's expression to change greatly and making it difficult for them to breathe. These royal family members were usually very imposing, but in front of Tang Jing, they were like babies facing a giant. They did not have any aura at all and were instead suppressed to the point that they could not speak. This is not a negotiation. There are no conditions to be discussed. You just need to remember my words. Tang Jing's voice was like thunder on the ground, causing everyone's mind to be greatly shaken. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1708. The members of the royal family were greatly shocked, but they had no way to refute. They could only stare blankly at Tang Jing. Tang Jing ignored their feelings and said bluntly, "First, the things that you stole from my motherland in the past will be returned to you. Furthermore, you will pay for what you did back then." Tang Jing did not even have the time to say the second condition before everyone seemed to explode into discussion. These old countries were imperialists in the past. They plundered who knew how much Huaxia's resources. Many antiques and national treasures entered their national museums and were proudly displayed to the world. They also took a lot of gold and silver to enrich their national coffers. Tang Jing had not thought about this before. He did not expect that they would take the initiative to walk into the knife's edge. In that case, he might as well get rid of them all together. Spit out what you ate from me and return what you took from me. None of the royal families expected Tang Jing to propose such a condition. It was too harsh. If they really did that, it would be a slap to their own faces. Not only would the royal family lose face, but the country's dignity would also be greatly reduced. The resentment of the people would definitely boil. Tang Jing did not care whether or not the people in their country would boil with resentment. When they plundered Huaxia back then, they had not thought about the people of Huaxia. "Can we change the condition?" someone asked weakly. "Change the condition?" Tang Jing laughed coldly. "I just finished speaking. Did you forget? Looks like I'll have to teach you a lesson." His expression darkened. The members of the royal family felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on their chests. They could not breathe at all. Some of the weaker ones directly rolled their eyes. The old king and An were exceptions. The two of them did not feel this pressure and looked at each other in horror. The old king was not as worried as the royal family. In every world war they were neutral countries. Therefore they had never invaded Huaxia and did not need to worry about this. However, he understood the feelings of the other royal families. In this way, the royal family's reputation would be completely ruined. This move was like hitting a snake where it hurt the most. After this battle, the prestige of the imperial family would be swept away. It would be very difficult for them to rise again in the future. They could only abide by the law and manage their own territory. A moment later, Tang Jing removed the pressure, and everyone felt their bodies relax as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. They gasped for breath and no one dared to refute. Secondly, in terms of international cooperation, your country is not allowed to make things difficult for our country. When it comes to international affairs, our country is the leader. You are not allowed to treat the Huaxia people in your country as second-class citizens, Tang Jing added. Following Huaxia's lead, these few words gave the members of the royal family a headache. Didn't this mean that they could only be underlings in the future? No one wanted to be a lackey for the rest of their lives. Tang Jing saw through their thoughts and sneered, "You don't want to, right? Then I'll imitate your actions of setting up concessions in my country. I'll also set up a few concessions in your country." Oh no. The members of the royal family shook their heads like a rattle drum. Compared to this condition, It seemed that Tang Zheng's proposal was not so difficult to accept. I only have these two conditions. If you agree, everyone will be safe. If you don't, then I'm sorry, I can't guarantee what will happen tomorrow. Anyway, I have a lot of free time these few days. I don't mind exercising my muscles. Tang Zheng moved his body and his joints made cracking sounds. The members of the royal family were ashen. After hesitating for a long time, they said, "We'll go back and think about it." "There's no time for you to think about it. Give me your answer now. Do you agree or not? It's simple and straightforward. There's no need to be so wishy-washy." Tang Zheng refused directly. The members of the royal family were speechless. Tang Zheng stood up and said, "I'm hungry. Wait for me to have dinner. If you don't give me an answer, then I'll take it as a no." After that, he left without looking back, completely ignoring the members of the royal family who were staring at each other, and hurriedly got up and chased after him. The members of the royal family immediately surrounded the old king and began talking at the same time. The old king was chased and intercepted. He was miserable beyond words and could only smile wryly. Tang Zheng had thrown down the equivalent of an atomic bomb. The old king was relaxed and didn't care about anything, but he was suffering. Although that was the case, the smile in the depths of the old king's eyes showed that he enjoyed this feeling. At the very least, those members of the royal family who usually didn't put him in their eyes had no choice but to flatter him, and looked at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. "These two conditions of yours will definitely cause an earthquake." Tang Zheng smiled faintly. "They know very well how they treated my motherland back then. Now it's time for them to pay their debts. There's an old saying in my motherland, it's not that they won't pay it back, it's just that it's not time yet. If they hadn't done these bad things and planted the seeds, they wouldn't have to swallow the bitter fruit today." And nodded as if she understood. Her expression dimmed slightly. "What about my country? What are you going to do?" Tang Zheng stopped and said, "Your country didn't do those bad things. Of course, you don't have to worry." Anne's heart relaxed. "Thank you." Finished speaking, she stood on her tiptoes and kissed Tang Zheng on the cheek. Tang Zheng stared blankly as he unconsciously touched his face. They kissed just like that. Yi Dingdong's voice rang out. The three girls walked over together. And felt shy in her heart, but she pretended to be calm. Did we disturb your good time?" Yi Dingdang glanced at Tang Zheng and teased. Tang Zheng rolled his eyes innocently. This had nothing to do with him. She was the one who took the initiative to kiss him. Wu and Lu Qingmei also looked at Tang Zheng meaningfully. He felt that he wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River, so he simply didn't explain. "I'm hungry. I'm going to eat first." He deliberately touched his stomach and said, "Who are you trying to fool? You won't be hungry even if you don't eat for a few months." Yi Dingdang directly exposed him. Lu Qingmei didn't want Tang Zheng to continue to suffer. She changed the topic and said, "What you said just now was too good. What you did was too good. These powers invaded us in the past. Today we will make them pay back with interest." Wu also nodded heavily. "Back then, many martial seniors fought for our country in the invasion. Heroes sacrificed themselves in exchange for our current life. By doing this, you can be considered to have fulfilled the wishes of those seniors." Tang Zheng sighed with emotion. "When I was studying history, I saw the invasion and humiliation of my country. I wished I could travel back to that magnificent era and fight for my country. This time it just so happened that it was a coincidence. Although we can't travel back in time, we can still make up for it." Yi Dingdang abhorred evil. She said empathetically, "So we all agree that what you did was too good. Then we won't pursue your womanizing." Tang Zheng's head was filled with black lines, and hurriedly changed the topic and said, "Will they agree to your conditions?" The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth raised as he gave an unfathomable smile. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1709. Once again, Tang Zheng returned to the royal family. Pairs of eyes were focused on him. Compared to his calm expression, these royal family members hung their heads dejectedly with bitter expressions that were uglier than crying. Seeing this reaction, Tang Zheng and looked at each other, already having an answer in their hearts. "Have you all decided?" The corners of Tang Zheng's mouth curled up slightly as he asked directly. "I agree." One of the royal family members replied resentfully. "I agree too." Another royal family member hesitated for a moment before squeezing out a sentence with difficulty. I agree too. Immediately, a tide of voices rose and fell. All of them agreed and not a single one of them disagreed. And looked at Tang Jing in shock. She had thought that there would still be objections, but unexpectedly, there was not a single one. Tang Jing had used his own strength to intimidate them all. The old king's heart was also filled with mixed feelings. He was one of the parties involved and had been blocked by all the royal family members just now, so he was very clear about their thoughts. It had to be said that in order to maintain their status, the royal family had no choice but to agree to this condition even if it meant losing face. He secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, his ancestors had not invaded Huaxia. Otherwise, his mood would be no different from everyone else's at this moment. Without a doubt, because of Tang Zheng's decision, the world's structure would change. Many people had already realized that this was no longer the original world. Tang Jing looked around with satisfaction and said, "This is your way of making up for the mistakes of your ancestors. Why are you crying? You should be happy. Come smile." How could anyone smile? Their hearts were filled with mixed feelings. Not crying was already a great effort. And looked at this comical scene and could not help but laugh. This caused the others to glare at her angrily. However, when they saw Tang Jing beside her, they resentfully withdrew their gazes. The royal family members had come with hope but left with grievances. They did not dare to stay for another minute, afraid that Tang Jing would raise additional conditions. If that happened, they would really cry. After settling these matters, Tang Jing did not stay any longer. He leaped onto the somersault cloud and soared into the sky. When the people in the royal castle saw this scene, their eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. The old king couldn't help but feel proud of his wise decision again. On the somersault cloud and kept waving goodbye to her family and hometown. The old king spent a lot of effort to find a good excuse to push his daughter out. Tang Jing really wanted to refuse, but he couldn't find a reason to. In the end, he could only pinch his nose and accept it. And had helped him auction off so many rare treasures, which was also a great merit. He couldn't just abandon her after using them all up. And gathered her emotions and looked around curiously. She said in surprise, "This somersault cloud is amazing. It's soft and fluffy like cotton candy, but it won't make me fall." No one responded to her for a long time. She looked around and found that Yi Dingdang, Lu Qingmei, and Wu were all looking at her with strange expressions. "What's the matter?" Anne asked. Yi Dingdang wished she could find a piece of tofu to kill herself with. She had suddenly decided to have Umo land in Anne's country. She never expected that and would actually go back with them. Although the castle was very selfless, it was because they thought that Anne and Tang Jing were impossible. But when the old king found a good excuse and brought up Tian Chanzi, she immediately realized that she had lifted a rock only to drop it on her own feet. How could they not see through the old king's intentions? He clearly wanted to set up Tang Jing and Anne. The key point was that they couldn't find a reason to refuse, which made them very angry. Yi Dingdang suffered a loss and had nowhere to vent her anger. She could only viciously pinch Tang Jing. Tang Jing grinned, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. How could Tang Jing not understand Yi Dingdang's intentions? But he was really wronged. He didn't do anything. Wasn't all of this caused by her? Yi Dingdang also knew that she was in the wrong. She resentfully stood at the edge of the somersault cloud and watched the scenery below fly by like flickering lights and passing shadows. Seeing that the atmosphere was somewhat awkward, Lu Qingmei broke the silence and said, "In the future, you should ride the somersault cloud a few more times. You'll get used to it." And smiled sweetly and looked at Tang Jing affectionately. She didn't feel the slightest bit of awkwardness and said, "Tang Jing, then I'll have to trouble you in the future." Ever since they got on the somersault cloud, Anne's enthusiasm burst forth once again. Her originally silent heart was once again restless. Tang Jing resentfully nodded. Seeing that the atmosphere was becoming more and more awkward, he hurriedly urged the somersault cloud to speed up their return home. Early in the morning, when the first ray of sunlight shone on the capital, the somersault cloud quietly landed in the villa. The witch tribe elder hurriedly went up to welcome them. During this period, he didn't dare to slack off at all. He personally went up to take on the heavy responsibility of patrolling. When he saw the few people walking down from the somersault cloud, the witch tribe elder stretched his neck and looked around. However, he didn't see anyone else, especially the figures of the many witch tribe members. The elder's heart thumped. Tang Jing was as thin as a strand of hair. He immediately noticed that something was wrong with the elder and hurriedly comforted him. "Elder, don't worry. They're all safe. I left them in the sky beyond. The space there is more spacious and it's suitable for them to display their skills." Only then did the elder feel relieved. The news of Tang Zheng's return quickly spread throughout the villa. Everyone walked out and excitedly saw that they had returned safe and sound. They were even more curious about the experience in the sky beyond. Fang Shishir grabbed Yi Dingdang and the two of them started to whisper. Fang Shishir's face was full of surprise and envy. When the others heard this, their reactions were similar. They couldn't wait to see the sky beyond. Of course, when they heard about the dangers in the sky beyond, they couldn't help but hold their breaths. Their hearts seemed to have stopped beating. Seeing Yi Dingdang chattering, Tang Jing was happy and relaxed. His gaze swept across the crowd and sized everyone up. Everyone had changed too much. Almost everyone had undergone earth-shattering changes. Their cultivation and aura were completely different from before. The wall-breaking golden elixir. His heart skipped a beat. He had already figured out what was going on. He had already exorcised everyone's inner demons. Their cultivation was already twice as fast with half the effort. In addition, with the help of the wall-breaking golden elixir, their speed was like a rocket. His gaze first fell on Nana because she had changed the most. In the past, the Empyrean fairy had fed her many pills and planted a solid foundation of jealousy. Furthermore, she was still a child. Her heart was pure and she didn't have any distracting thoughts. After exorcising her inner demons with the help of the wall-breaking golden elixir, she truly soared into the sky. Before Tang Jing left, she was only at the 9th stage Yuanying stage. Now she had broken through the huge threshold between the Yuanying stage and the soul formation stage and reached the 2nd stage of the soul formation stage. Gasp. He sucked in a breath of cold air. His gaze fell on Mu Hongyan, who was beside Nana. Mu Hongyan was much inferior to her daughter, but she had also broken through to the Yuanying stage. What about Fang Shishir? She stared at Fang Shishir, who seemed to have sensed something. She quickly turned her head and their eyes met. 6th stage Yuanying stage. She was taught by Tian Chanzi and started cultivating very early. However, she was surpassed by Nana and Linger. Cultivation required talent. Her talent was indeed not as good as Nana and Linger. She was able to reach her current level of cultivation because of her hard work and the results of various opportunities. When Tang Zheng's gaze fell on his grandfather, his face lit up. Tang Dehai was already very old. He cultivated purely to strengthen his body. However, he was also at the golden elixir stage. He was strong and didn't look like an old man at all. Yuemo looked around, but there was no sign of Linger or Li Xiaotian. Linger must still be busy with her own business. As for Li Xiaoan, Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. He remembered that Li Xiaotian went to the heavenly gate to find the Empyrean fairy. He didn't know what happened. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 17:10. After everyone finished catching up and listening to the soul-stirring journey of the sky beyond heaven, they were unable to calm down for a long time. Only then did Tang Jing have the time to ask about the whereabouts of Linger and Li Xiaotian. As he expected, Linger was busy filming and her feet were not touching the ground. How could she have time to come back? As for Li Xiaotian, everyone was silent. After she went to the gate of heaven, there was no news of her and she did not return. No one knew what happened. Wu and Li Xiaotian had competed for so many years and understood Li Xiaotian very well. She said in a deep voice, "This is not normal. We have been in the sky beyond heaven for so long. Logically speaking, Li Xiaotian should have gone to the gate of heaven." Tang Jing thought for a while and admitted that Wu's words were reasonable. He said, "What about the Li Palace? Did they not send people to look for Li Xiaoan when there was no news of her?" Fang Shishir obviously knew the inside story and explained, "Of course the Li Palace sent people to look for her, but the location of the gate of heaven is uncertain. Back then with Fu Yao leading the way you all arrived smoothly. Now we are like headless flies. How could it be so easy to find the gate of heaven?" Tang Jing looked deeply at Fang Shishir and recalled the scene when he first arrived at the gate of heaven. He said, "The gate of heaven is indeed not that easy to find. Moreover, when we left the gate of heaven, Yan Qingyi sealed the gate of heaven. When Fu Yao went to the gate of heaven, she must have opened the seal. Even so, with Li Xiaotian's cultivation, she may not be able to truly step into the gate of heaven. His heart sank as he realized that he had overlooked a very important point. When Li Xiaotian went to the gate of heaven to look for the Empyrean fairy Fu Yao, he should have stopped her. Now that her whereabouts were unknown and the danger was unpredictable, he could not sit idly by. Sure, are you in contact with the Li Palace now? Tang Jing asked. Fang Sure nodded. Most of the people in charge of the family had left, and the others had their own responsibilities. Of course, she had to stand up and take on the burden. Then contact the Li Palace and have them send out everyone to see if they can find Li Xiaotian's whereabouts. If not, I'm afraid I'll have to make a trip to the Heaven Gate. Tang Jing said. Because of Li Xiaotian's disappearance, the happy atmosphere of the reunion was broken, and many people's mood became heavy. Li Xiaotian had an eccentric temperament and behaved in an unruly manner, but he gradually integrated into the big family. In particular, she had risked her life to save Tang Jing several times when he was in danger. These actions had helped her win the recognition and respect of everyone. Now that her whereabouts were unknown, it naturally affected everyone's nerves. For the next 2 days, Tang Jing waited at home for news from Li Xiaotian. However, what he did not receive was news from the government. The royal family took action and closely contacted the government of Huaxia, indicating that they wanted to return the treasures that had been plundered in the past. This confused the government, who thought it was a conspiracy of the other party. After some investigation, they finally figured out some clues. Turned out that all of this was because of Tang Jing. The government was both emotional and grateful, so they sent people to contact Tang Jing to express their gratitude. Unfortunately, Tang Jing's thoughts were all on Li Xiaotian. He did not see the government and did not intend to get involved in the following matters. The government understood Tang Jing's attitude and all of them admired him. Although Tang Jing had conflicts with the government before, that was all in the past. Many people were still worried that Tang Jing would do something out of line now that he was so powerful. Now it seemed that this worry was superfluous. Judging from his behavior, he was a very patriotic person and would not betray his country. However, when the news that several major countries were returning various national treasures was made public, the world was in an uproar. The people of Huaxia were so excited that it was as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Huaxia's national prestige was unprecedentedly high. From the government to the people, everyone was of one mind, looking forward to the national treasures returning to the motherland. The whole country celebrated, but the villa was gloomy. The Li Palace finally sent back news that Li Xiaotian had indeed disappeared. I'll go to the gate of heaven. Tang Jing made a prompt decision. He was afraid that Li Xiaotian would have an accident if this dragged on. No one objected to this decision. Moreover, the Empyrean fairy was still in the gate of heaven. If he could find her on this trip, then the danger of Tang Jing's 9-yang saint body exploding would be resolved. I want to go too. I want to see Master. Nana could not wait to express her position. She did not give Tang Jing a chance to refute and said, I've already grown up. I have the strength to protect myself. I definitely won't cause trouble for everyone. Nana had indeed changed a lot compared to before. Compared to children of the same age, she was like heaven and earth. She was a full head taller with long arms and legs. Her skin was white and delicate. Tang Jing saw that the others were also looking forward to it. In the end, Tang Jing's gaze fell on Fang Sure and said, Sure, you go too. This trip to the gate of heaven should not take too long. It won't be as long as going to the sky beyond heaven. This was clearly to make up for the regret of Fang Sure not going to the sky beyond heaven. Naturally, no one objected. Although the others also wanted to go, they tactfully did not fight with Fang Sure for this opportunity. Fang Sure was pleasantly surprised. Tang Jing had taken the initiative to let her participate. This meant that the hard work of staying at home was not in vain. This time there were many people guarding at home. There was almost no threat in this world, so there was nothing to worry about. The three of them immediately sat on the somersault cloud and soared into the sky, flying towards the south. In the Sea of Death, the somersault cloud lowered its altitude. It almost brushed the surface of the sea as it flew, stirring up waves of water. This sea could no longer be called the Sea of Death because there were no longer those silent ancient ships and ghostly skeletons. When the gate of heaven opened, the Sea of Death had completely changed. In addition, Yan Qingyi had sealed the gate of heaven. Tang Jing still remembered Yan Qingyi's solemn vow that other than her, no one else could think of breaking the seal and approaching the gate of heaven. Tang Jing believed her at that time. However, as his cultivation increased, he did not take this to heart. Moreover, the Emperor of Heaven's soul was traveling with the Empyrean fairy, so he was even less worried about the seal. After all, the gate of heaven was the Emperor of Heaven's territory. Of course, he had a way to break the seal. That day Tang Jing saw the gate of heaven in the sea with his own eyes. Now that the sea was vast, where could they find the gate of heaven? In the past there was an entrance to the sea. Now the situation had changed completely. Even the entrance to the sea was gone. Fang Shishir stared blankly at the boundless sea and asked, "How do we find the gate of heaven?" Nana also stared straight at Tang Jing and said, "Brother, hurry up and find the gate of heaven. I really want to see Master." Tang Jing pondered for a while and soared into the air. He floated on the sea and stretched out his hands. The sea seemed to boil as drops of water flew up from the surface. After a while, the sky was filled with water droplets that lingered around Tang Jing. A mysterious force merged with these water droplets. Whoosh! Like a heavy downpour, these water droplets fell on the surface of the sea. However, they did not merge with the sea. Instead, they quickly fell into the depths of the sea. Chapter 17:11. The water droplets merged into the sea, and like a series of detectors, they displayed everything on the seabed clearly in Tang Jing's mind. Fang Shishir and Nana looked at him curiously, their faces full of anticipation. The water droplets were extremely fast and they quickly scouted out the situation on the seabed. Finally, he found his target. An island was floating on the seabed like a submarine. Most importantly, the island seemed to be enveloped by a huge bubble, and the seawater did not seep into every corner. The island seemed to be another world and the seawater around it did not fit in. The heavenly gate. Tang Jing exclaimed in his mind and immediately recognized it. Back then, the heavenly gate had sunk to the seabed and it was still here, but in the deep sea he would not have been able to find it if he was not as sure as he was. The Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean fairy must have reached the heavenly gate, so why didn't they bring this island to the surface? Tang Jing could not guess the answer, but he decided to bring the island to the surface first, so that he could finally Shao Tian and the Empyrean fairy more easily. There was no trace of the huge heavenly gate, and this was because of the seal set up by Yan Qingyi, which made the heavenly gate disappear without a trace. Even if they reached the island, they would not be able to find the heavenly gate. The seal formation is still here. Could it be that the Empyrean fairy did not break the seal and enter the heavenly gate? Tang Jing was shocked by this thought. The heavenly gate was built by the Fu family, and the Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean fairy were traveling together, so how could they not break Yan Qingyi's seal? No matter what the truth is, I have to find a way to bring the island to the surface first. He immediately used the sky swallowing technique, and a huge black hole appeared on the surface of the sea. Boom! With a loud sound, the seawater was like a giant beast soaring into the sky and being completely sucked into the black hole. In an instant, a huge vacuum appeared in the sea and all the seawater was sucked into the black hole, revealing the island in the deep sea. Fang Shishir and Nana looked at this scene in horror, their eyes wide open. Is this the gate of heaven? Nana muttered to herself. The gate of heaven is on this island. Wait for me to suck this island up. The might of the sky-devouring technique increased greatly, and the island was completely enveloped by this power. It slowly flew up like a huge moving fortress, gradually approaching the three of them. When the island completely flew to sea level, Tang Jing quickly stopped circulating his energy. With a rumbling sound, the seawater in all directions surged and filled up the vacuum at the bottom of the sea, and the island floated on the surface of the water. Looking at the fruits of his labor, Tang Jing grinned. There must be another way for this island to surface, but he was too lazy to look for it. He might as well use brute force to pull it out of the water. It was a different approach, but the result was the same. In the end, he achieved his goal. After a long time, Fang Shishir saw this island again, and couldn't help but be filled with emotions. However, she soon found something strange. Looking down from above, she could see everything on the island, but she didn't see the tall gate of heaven. She couldn't help but ask, "Where's the gate of heaven?" The gate of heaven is still sealed and hasn't appeared. I suspect that they didn't break Yan Qingyi's seal. Tang Jing said solemnly. Fang Shishir understood but found it hard to believe. she said. How is that possible? The Gate of Heaven is an important place for the Fu clan. Even if Fu Yao can't do anything, the heavens and earth should have a way to break the seal. Tang Jing shook his head. He couldn't figure out the mystery either. He said, let's go to the island first to find out. The three of them landed on the island. The island was quiet and there was a sense of oppression. Luckily, they weren't ordinary people, so they didn't feel uncomfortable. Nana was like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins. She rushed to the front to scout the way. She was very lively and happy. Didn't you find anything strange? The environment has changed a lot compared to the last time we were here. Feng Shishir looked around and said thoughtfully. Tang Jing said solemnly, it's not just changed a lot, it's completely different. If it was someone else, they would probably think that they came to the wrong place. What's going on? Feng Shishir asked curiously. Tang Jing shook his head. I can't figure it out either. Maybe we'll have the answer when we find the Gate of Heaven. Because everything on the island had changed, they couldn't find the Gate of Heaven based on their memories. After wandering around for half a day, they still couldn't find the Gate of Heaven. I'm 100% sure that there's something strange in the Gate of Heaven. Maybe it has something to do with Yan Qingyi's seal. Tang Jing said solemnly. It has something to do with Yan Qingyi's seal? Feng Shishir asked in surprise. Tang Jing nodded. Ever since they returned from the Gate of Heaven, Yan Qingyi had undergone earth-shattering changes. In the end, she parted ways with Tang Jing. Maybe Yan Qingyi's mind had changed when they were in the Gate of Heaven. She had once vowed that other than her, no one else could break the Gate of Heaven's seal. Now it seemed that her words had a deeper meaning. That seal was definitely not simple. There was definitely something strange about it. Tang Jing clearly remembered that Yan Qingyi had casually placed a few stones beside the Gate of Heaven. Relying on the time and place, she had activated the seal. If we can find those stones, it won't be difficult to break the seal. Feng Shishir also remembered that scene and said, then let's hurry up and find the stones. They could only treat it as a living horse. Hearing that they were going to find the stones, Nana became excited and shouted, find the stones, find the stones. The three of them almost searched the entire island once, but they still couldn't find those stones. I'm so stupid. Why do we need to personally find the stones? Don't we have the four symbols? Just as they were at their wits' end, Tang Jing slapped his head and suddenly had an idea. For symbols, come out. Sumeru world flashed and the four symbols appeared in front of the three of them. He asked respectfully, Master, what are your orders? For symbols, this island is sealed by a mysterious formation. The key point of this formation is a few stones. Think of a way to find these stones. Tang Jing ordered. Yes, Master. The four symbols accepted the order and stomped heavily on the ground. Then he connected with the ground and became a part of the island. The stones on this island formed some kind of mysterious connection with him. The three of them looked at the four symbols expectantly. Nana tilted her head and stared with her big black eyes, asking, can he really do it? Tang Jing was full of confidence and said, it's just a few stones. How can they stump the four symbols? If he didn't have the four symbols, Tang Jing wouldn't dare to make such a boast. However, the four symbols were different. Even Tang Jing might not be completely aware of his mystical power. Rumble. The island trembled as if there was an earthquake. However, the four symbols closed their eyes tightly and didn't move in the slightest. Don't panic. Tang Jing comforted. Nana was fearless and calm, and Feng Shishir's expression was also calm. Finally, the four symbols opened their eyes. Their fingers rapidly pointed in several directions and a mysterious power shot out. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Another wave of tremors shook the mountain and earth, and soil flew everywhere. A few stones were uprooted from the ground and rushed out of the soil, exposing themselves to the few of them. The few of them were immediately attracted by these stones. Tang Jing couldn't hold back his surprise and cheered, found it. In the distance, those stones were the same as before. Weren't they what they were looking for? Chapter 17:12. The group arrived in front of the stone and observed it curiously. There was nothing special about the stone, but it was able to seal the Gate of Heaven. It was really hard to imagine. Will the seal be broken if we move these stones away? Nana asked on a whim. As soon as she finished speaking, she hugged a stone with both hands. Yeah. She used all her strength, but the stone did not move at all. This stone is so heavy. Nana resentfully released her hands and said disappointedly. Tangjing laughed involuntarily. How could it be that easy to break the seal? Brute force won't work. Nana pouted disappointedly and said, so boring. Feng Shirshir had a difficult expression and said, for symbols, do you have a way? For symbols shook his head, I can't sense the gate of heaven at all, so naturally I don't know how to break the seal. Tangjing had already expected this and said with a faint smile, this seal came from Yanqingyi's hands, so it must be related to the way of heaven. How could it be broken so easily? Let me see if I can use the way of heaven to break this seal. He still had something to say in his heart. Even the Empyrean fairy was nowhere to be found, which was enough to show how strange this array was. Brother, you can definitely do it. Hurry up and break this seal, so annoying. Nana puffed up her cheeks and said angrily. Tangjing closed his eyes and released the way of heaven that he had comprehended. In an instant, it was as if he was connected to the island, and every blade of grass and every tree became more lively. He was shocked to find that every blade of grass and every tree had a wave of energy. This wave of energy was one with the entire island and could not be distinguished from each other. But at a certain place on the island, the energy was the most concentrated. That wave of majestic energy was like a cloud, far from what the surrounding thin energy could compare to. This place is definitely where the gate of heaven is. I didn't think that I would need to use the way of heaven to find it. It is impossible to distinguish it with the naked eye. Whoosh. He took a step forward and stepped on the grass, rushing towards the cloud as if he was flying. The others did not know what was going on and hurriedly chased after him. When Tangjing stopped, he stared at the open space in front of him. With the naked eye, there was nothing but weeds on the ground. The others followed his gaze, their faces full of question marks. They did not know what attracted him so much. Here it is. Tangjing shouted and pushed out his palms, sending a steady stream of energy towards the cloud. There was no reaction. Like a clay ox entering the sea, the cloud was safe and sound. However, Tangjing's energy escaped his control and entered the cloud, becoming a part of the cloud. The energy of the cloud had become stronger. Strange, it's actually not afraid of attacks. The seal is really strange. He walked towards the cloud but stopped immediately because the cloud had shifted its position and was now 1,000 meters away. Transfer? Tangjing was aghast. He had a deeper understanding of the power of the seal. The gate of heaven was no longer fixed but could move at will. How did this happen? Tangjing asked himself if he could do it. However, Yanqingyi had done it so easily that day. It had to be said that her comprehension of the heavenly Tao was far beyond that of Tangjing. I'm going to fight you. Let's see if I can break your seal and open the gate of heaven. Tangjing gathered his strength and chased after the cloud. He pushed out a stream of energy and silently merged with the cloud. Don't you like to eat my power? Let's see how long you can eat it. Although Tangjing could sense all of this with the heavenly Tao, he could not use the heavenly Tao to break the seal. The Emperor of Heaven's comprehension of the heavenly Tao was definitely higher than his, but he did not succeed. After he tried, he decided not to embarrass himself. He might as well find another way. A majestic stream of energy rushed out from his palms and merged with the cloud. The cloud trembled as if it was about to move again. Don't even think about moving. The energy in Tangjing's hands continuously surged out, establishing a connection between the cloud and him. It was as if there was an additional link. The cloud tried to move, but it was firmly bound by this link. Ah, you're not omnipotent. Tangjing laughed, all the energy in his body gushing out. He was not afraid that his power would disappear. There were no external attacks here, he only needed to deal with the seal. Hua. In the heavenly realm, a stream of energy floated up from the tree of life and flew into the 9 heavens. Then through Tangjing's arms it entered the cloud. In an instant the cloud trembled violently and could no longer hold on. It was like a fatty who had eaten too much and was still stuffing food into his stomach. Finally he could not hold it anymore. Boom. With a loud sound the cloud exploded. Bang bang bang. The sound of stones shattering rang out. The sealing stone was completely destroyed and the seal was removed. Tangjing's heart trembled. It was actually the effect of the Tree of Life. If he had known earlier, he would have used the Tree of Life's energy in the heavenly realm to break the seal. Yanqingyi was right. Other than her, It's almost impossible for others to break this seal. If it weren't for the help of the Tree of Life, I definitely wouldn't have been able to do it. No wonder the Empyrean Fairy and the Emperor of Heaven failed. Tangjing was shocked. He did not have time to sigh as his gaze was firmly fixed in front of him. After the cloud disappeared, a majestic stone gate stood in front of him. This was the Heavenly Gate. Compared to the Heavenly Gate, they were as small as ants. The others also saw the Heavenly Gate appear out of thin air and cheered. Especially the Heavenly Gate, who raised his neck as if his neck was about to break. He stared at the Heavenly Gate excitedly and curiously like an adult. This is the Heavenly Gate. Fang Shishir deliberately revisited the Heavenly Gate. When she saw the Heavenly Gate, she was reminded of the previous trip to the Heavenly Gate. Tangjing was the calmest. He walked step by step towards the Heavenly Gate. The four symbols took the lead and pressed their hands on the Heavenly Gate. With a creak, the Heavenly Gate slowly opened. In the past, the Heavenly Gate required the blood of the Fu clan to open, but this was not a problem for the four symbols. No matter how sturdy the Heavenly Gate was, he had a way to open it. There was a rumbling sound. The Heavenly Gate was completely opened. The group walked in with large strides. It was no different from before. Thus they walked forward with ease. The Heavenly Gate no longer had that gloomy and cold feeling. Because the yin qi in the Heavenly Gate had almost completely disappeared. A ball of heavenly fire emerged from Tangjing's fingertips and floated above their heads, guiding them into the depths of the Heavenly Gate. Along the way they did not see any traces of the Empyrean Fairy and Li Xiaotian. Everyone could not help but be shrouded in a shadow. Where on earth could they be? Since they did not break the seal, could they not be in the Heavenly Gate at all but somewhere else? We may not find them if we continue to search like this. Fang Shishir analyzed. Tangjing pondered for a moment and shook his head firmly. I have a premonition that they are here. Master, I will look for them. The four symbols volunteered. They placed their hands on the rock wall and executed their divine arts. After a while, the four symbols cried out in surprise. Chapter 17:13. The four symbols cried out in surprise as if they had found something. Four symbols, what did you find? Tangjing asked hurriedly. Master, I found traces of a few people, but I'm not sure if it's them. There's a mysterious energy blocking me, the four symbols said suspiciously. Tangjing's expression froze. The ceiling formation had already disappeared, so how could there still be such a situation? Then where are they? Bring me to them quickly. Master, I can only sense them, but I may not be able to save them. What? Tangjing was shocked. Aren't they trapped in the Heaven Gate? How can there be no way to save them? The four symbols' face was a little masculine and he shook his head resentfully. I don't know either. This feeling isn't very strong. I'll follow this feeling and see if I can get closer to them. All right, then hurry up and move, Tangjing urged, his brows tightly knitted together. What was the secret behind the ceiling formation set up by Yan Qingyi? It was actually so strange. The four symbols quickly rushed forward and Tangjing and the other two quickly followed. They gradually came to the deepest part of the Heaven Gate, and a weak yin qi pervaded the air. After the heavenly bed was destroyed, it could no longer be compared to before. The four symbols stopped in front of the statue of Fuxi, and stared at the statue with shining eyes, his expression changing slightly. What's the matter? Tangjing asked. The four symbols pointed at the statue of Fuxi and said, they seem to be inside here. Inside the statue? The three of them were greatly shocked, especially Tangjing, who had seen the scene of the Fuxi statue imparting the heavenly book Tao intent. He understood even more clearly that this statue was extraordinary, and it was the ancestor of the Fu clan, so he could not be the slightest bit negligent. Tangjing stared at the statue of Fuxi in a daze, as if he was weighing the pros and cons. This statue was not big, but it could imprison 3 people. There was probably something else about this statue. Master, do you want me to destroy it? The four symbols asked. Tangjing pondered for a moment and shook his head. Let me check it out first. His palm pressed against the Fuxi statue, but there was no longer any mysterious power rippling out from it. Tangjing activated the heavenly book, and the mysterious power of the heavenly Tao entered the statue of Fuxi from his palm. Immediately the statue of Fuxi glowed. Master, my senses have become even stronger. They are indeed within this statue, the four symbols cried out in alarm. Tang Jing was overjoyed and tried his best to activate the heavenly book. The light from the statue of Fuxi grew stronger and stronger. Tang Jing also sensed a few familiar auras. Fu Yao. Li Xiaotian. Tang Jing exclaimed to himself. He finally confirmed that what the four symbols said was true. Even if the four symbols were far away, he could sense them with his own supernatural power. However, Tang Jing had to come into contact with the statues and activate the ancient scroll of the heavenly tomes to achieve this effect. He immediately locked onto these auras. They seemed to be in another world, faintly discernible. He tried to follow this connection and save them, but found that it was not so easy. Four symbols, if we work together, do you have the confidence to save them? Tang Jing asked. The four symbols said without hesitation, with Master here, I have the confidence. Good, then let's activate together. There is a universe inside this statue and there is another small space. They are sealed in that small space. We have to forcibly save them from that small space, Tang Jing analyzed. The others suddenly understood. It seemed that the formation that Yan Qingyi laid down was actually one with the statue of Fuxi. The intruders were directly sealed in the statue. If it was not for Tang Jing, who knew how long they would have been sealed. Just thinking about it made them shudder. Yan Qingyi's methods were really powerful. The four symbols nodded to show that they understood. Tang Jing activated the spatial laws at the same time. Since this involved another space, although it was not as big as the space between the sky beyond heaven and the heaven realm, the spatial laws were still connected. Whoosh! The light on Fuxi's statue became brighter and brighter. It even covered the light of the heavenly fire floating above its head. A few pairs of eyes stared at the statue. Suddenly, a circle of ripples spread out from the statue. These ripples became more and more intense, like the surface of a lake where a stone was thrown. So dazzling. Suddenly, Fang Shishir and Nana closed their eyes at the same time. The light was too dazzling and it hurt their eyes. When they opened their eyes again, the light disappeared and two people were standing in front of them. Li Xiaotian. Master. Two cries of surprise sounded. Nana flew into the arms of one of them. It was the Empyrean fairy Fu Yao. The other person was Li Xiaotian. The two of them were still in a daze. When they heard the cries of surprise, they seemed to wake up from a dream. Their eyes gradually lit up. The Empyrean fairy stretched out her hands and hugged Nan Nan. Nan Nan rubbed her cheeks intimately, giggling and making a fuss. Tang Jing and the four symbols stopped at the same time. The two of them worked together and used their divine abilities to finally save the two of them. Tang Jing looked at the two of them in surprise and said with lingering fear, "Congratulations to the two of you for escaping. This was really scary. If it wasn't for the four symbols, I wouldn't have been able to find you." Normal people revered Fuxi's statue and would not dare to use their skills to test the statue. That would be a great disrespect. Only people who were not from the Fu clan would dare to be so daring. If it wasn't for this, they definitely wouldn't have found out that there was a universe inside the statue. Li Xiaotian also saw Tang Jing. He revealed a guilty expression and said resentfully, "Tang Jing, I'm sorry. I didn't help you. Instead, I let you take the risk and come to Heaven's Gate." Tang Jing felt relieved and also became happy. He held Li Xiaotian's hand and said, "Why say such silly things? You did it to save me. You should be the one who worked hard." The corners of Li Xiaotian's mouth curled up and her cold face changed. Tang Jing turned to look at the Empyrean fairy. She looked angry and said to herself, "Yan Qingyi, you dare to play tricks with us and set up such a seal. I'm not done with you." The mysterious maiden of the 9 heavens rarely lost her composure like this. This greatly shocked the other three. Tang Jing was also very angry and said, "Yan Qingyi likes to play tricks. She sealed Heaven's Gate in front of our eyes but fooled everyone. We didn't even discover the true power of the seal." He paused and asked, "Fu Yao, where is the Emperor of Heaven? Has he been reborn?" This was the Empyrean fairy's true purpose for coming here. Hearing this question, Fu Yao's attention was immediately attracted. She revealed a hesitant expression and resentfully said, "We were sealed here when we just came to Heaven's Gate. Father didn't have time to test it." "Then where is the Emperor of Heaven?" He remembered that the Emperor of Heaven's soul was kept in a container. He didn't know how it was now. Fu Yao took out a jade bottle and called, "Father, you can come out now." However, there was no reaction from the jade bottle. It was as if the Emperor of Heaven wasn't inside. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy's expressions changed at the same time. They stared at the bottle with shining eyes. They didn't feel the soul tremble. This meant that the Emperor of Heaven's soul was no longer inside. Then where did the Emperor of Heaven go? Chapter 17:14. The Emperor of Heaven's spirit had been temporarily residing in the porcelain bottle, and the Empyrean Fairy had been carrying it with her all this time. Why was there suddenly no response? Tang Jing said in bewilderment. The Emperor of Heaven's spirit is not in the porcelain bottle. The Empyrean Fairy was at a loss for words and said, I remember that he was always in there. How could he have disappeared? Don't look for him, I'm here. Suddenly the Emperor of Heaven's voice rang out, giving everyone a fright. They hurriedly turned their heads and looked in the direction of the voice's origin. The Fuxi statue. Several pairs of eyes stared fixedly at the Fuxi statue. The Emperor of Heaven's voice actually came from inside. The few of them were dumbfounded. Everyone else had already come out, so how could the Emperor of Heaven be left inside? Don't be surprised, I'm just a strand of spirit. There's no way I can compare to your physical bodies, so I didn't succeed in escaping. The Emperor of Heaven comforted them. The Empyrean Fairy hurriedly rushed over and grabbed the statue's arm, saying, Father, then how can we save you? Everyone listened attentively and guessed that this was a big problem. Haha, who said I was going to get out? The Emperor of Heaven laughed loudly. Immediately, everyone was confused and didn't understand what was going on. Tang Jing was deep in thought. The Emperor of Heaven's words had a hidden meaning, and it probably wasn't that simple. He hurriedly asked, Emperor of Heaven, could it be that you found something in the Fuxi statue? The Emperor of Heaven praised, Tang Jing, you're really smart. I haven't even said anything, but you've already guessed a little. Empyrean Fairy knew her father very well and gradually understood that things were not as simple as he thought. She asked, Father, what is going on? We only know that this statue is a memorial to Ancestor Fuxi, but we don't know the origins of this statue. Furthermore, for countless years, no one in the Fu clan dared to disrespect the ancestor statue, so naturally, we wouldn't be able to find out that there was another world within the statue. Everyone secretly nodded. If it wasn't for the four symbols' divine ability, no one would have guessed that they were completely sealed in Fuxi's statue. The Emperor of Heaven continued, this statue was actually carved by Ancestor Fuxi himself. He nourished the statue with his blood, day after day, year after year. Even now, the statue still contains Ancestor Fuxi's blood. Unless you enter the statue, you won't be able to discover this. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Although no one was very clear about what Fuxi's blood meant, they could still guess a little. It was really hard to predict what kind of divine ability a statue nourished by Fuxi's blood would have. Because of the ancestor's blood, this statue has already undergone a tremendous change. It is no longer an inanimate object. The Emperor of Heaven added. Everyone was still in awe of the great power of Fuxi's blood when Tang Zheng's heart trembled. He asked in surprise, could it be that this statue can be used as a body? Your reaction is very fast. You're right, this can already be used as a body. The Emperor of Heaven said with certainty. Only then did the others finally react. They stared at the statue in disbelief. No one would have thought that the statue would actually become a body. This was definitely because of Fuxi's blood, and it was the result of countless years. The Empyrean Fairy said in surprise, doesn't that mean, Father, you can use the ancestor statue as a body? The father and daughter had always wanted to find the most suitable body for the Emperor of Heaven. Unfortunately, this matter was too difficult. After so long, they still hadn't succeeded. Now, with Fuxi's statue in front of them, wasn't it the best body? The ancestor statue is used by the Fu clan to worship the ancestor. If I take it for myself, wouldn't it be disrespectful to the ancestor and let down the Fu clan? Fuxi said with some apprehension. The Empyrean Fairy immediately fell silent. As a member of the Fu clan, she understood her father's thoughts very well. Tang Jing laughed and said, your thinking is too conservative. You don't know how to draw inferences from one case. Hearing this, everyone looked at Tang Jing suspiciously. They didn't know what he was up to. Tang Jing explained, other than the two of you, who else is in the Fu clan? The Empyrean Fairy's expression tensed up. She didn't know how to answer. Don't keep us in suspense. The Fu clan is only left with us father and daughter. The Emperor of Heaven replied. Then it's settled. The Fu clan is only left with the two of you. Who else can we let down? Tang Jing rolled his eyes and asked. This. The Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean Fairy were speechless for a moment. Tang Jing didn't give them a chance to argue and added, also, who is Senior Fushi? He is the first Emperor of Heaven. His abilities must be far superior to yours, right? Of course. The Emperor of Heaven replied without hesitation. Tang Jing spread his hands and said, then that's incredible. Senior Fushi purposely used his blood to nourish the statue. Maybe he had a deep intention. What if he predicted that there would be a use for the statue in the future? That's why he did this. These words enlightened the Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean Fairy. The Empyrean Fairy's eyes lit up. She stared at Tang Jing and said, are you serious? I think that it's very possible. Senior Fushi's every move definitely has a deep meaning. We can't rule out this possibility. Tang Jing said. The Empyrean Fairy nervously asked the Emperor of Heaven, Father, what do you think? The Emperor of Heaven was silent. He seemed to be digesting this news. Everyone also stared at the statue without blinking, waiting for the Emperor of Heaven's answer. After a long time, the Emperor of Heaven finally opened his mouth and said, Tang Jing, it's not impossible. Tang Jing shrugged and said, then it's fine. What's there to be conflicted about? This isn't disrespect to Senior Fushi at all. It's just fulfilling his last wish. This is true respect to Senior Fushi. In truth, Tang Jing wasn't speaking nonsense. This was because it really was possible. The Emperor of Heaven wasn't so easily fooled. He naturally understood this point, which was why he agreed with his father's words. The Empyrean Fairy was delighted and said, doesn't that mean Father can use this body? I can give it a try. The Emperor of Heaven didn't hesitate any longer. It was impossible for him to find a second body that was so suitable. Then let's start quickly. The Empyrean Fairy urged. The Emperor of Heaven immediately began to try to fuse his spirit with this special body. Tang Jing's thoughts drifted. This was too unexpected. The sealing formation set up by Yan Qingyi actually sealed the intruder into the statue of Fushi. Didn't that mean that the statue of Fushi was also connected to the sealing formation? Indeed, the sealing formation was connected to the Gate of Heaven. The foundation of the Gate of Heaven was the statue of Fushi. This meant that the sealing formation was also connected to the statue of Fushi. When the sealing formation was activated, there was a universe within the statue of Fushi. It just so happened that it reached some kind of tacit understanding with the formation. Naturally, the intruder was sucked into the statue. Bang! Suddenly, a muffled sound came from within the statue of Fushi, interrupting Tang Jing's thoughts. The Empyrean Fairy asked anxiously, Father, did you succeed? I failed. The Emperor of Heaven replied dejectedly. Chapter 17:15. Failed. Everyone turned pale with fright as they found it hard to believe this result. The Emperor of Heaven actually failed. This was hard to imagine. They couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. The Empyrean Fairy asked, Father, how did you fail? The Emperor of Heaven said regretfully, although the ancestor's statue is the most perfect body, it is not as simple as I thought it would be to fuse my soul with the body. Why do you say that? Tang Jing asked curiously. The ancestor's statue contains the ancestor's blood after all and has the ancestor's characteristics. It can't help but repel the external soul, so I can't fuse with it. The Emperor of Heaven sighed with emotion. It was clear that victory was in sight, but in the end, everything was in vain. Fushi's blood. Tang Jing suddenly realized that the problem was here. He asked thoughtfully, if the power of Fushi's blood is suppressed, will you be able to successfully fuse with the body? The Emperor of Heaven did not make any guarantees and said with suspicion, I can try. After pausing for a moment he said, the main point is how to suppress the ancestor's blood. This is not an easy thing to do. There will always be a way. Tang Jing shrugged and did not back down. He suddenly had an idea and said, Ancestor Fushi comprehended the heavenly Tao. I wonder if the heavenly Tao has any effect on his blood. The Emperor of Heaven was enlightened and praised, this is a good idea. He was blinded and only wanted to use all his strength to fuse with the statue. He did not think of using the heavenly Tao to suppress Fushi's blood. I'm starting. Tang Jing called out and activated the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao immediately enveloped the statue. After a long time he felt that there was a sign of flowing in the statue. Is this Fushi's blood? Yes. The Emperor of Heaven's voice sounded in his mind. He did not know when, but he had already successfully communicated with the Emperor of Heaven. Then let me see if I can suppress this Fushi's blood. Tang Jing did feel a rebound from the blood. When his heavenly Tao came into contact with the blood, the rebound was even stronger. But was the heavenly Tao useless? I don't believe it. Tang Jing gritted his teeth and desperately activated the heavenly Tao. An earth-shattering power enveloped Fushi's blood, attempting to suppress it with a decisive advantage. The rebound effect of Fushi's blood was indeed reduced. Before Tang Jing could rejoice, the rebounding force suddenly increased. This meant that the heavenly Tao had truly lost its effect. Emperor of Heaven looked at this scene in horror. He originally thought that the chances of success were very high, but now it seemed that both he and Tang Jing were wrong. Tang Jing furrowed his brows and racked his brains. Everything in the world had its own counter. Although Fushi's blood was powerful, there was always something that could suppress it. There was no doubt about it. It was just that he had not found something that could suppress everything. Fushi's blood. Fushi's blood. Suddenly Tang Jing had a flash of inspiration. It was as if a bolt of lightning had struck his mind. Qi Yu's blood. These 4 words popped up in his mind. The effect of Qi Yu's blood was self-evident. It was just that Tang Jing had not thought of it for a while. Now he felt that this method was more and more feasible. Thus he immediately forced out a drop of Qi Yu's blood from Qi Yu's heart. The fresh blood gathered at his fingertip. It was bright red and had a mysterious aura. Whoosh! Tang Jing flicked his finger and Qi Yu's blood flew onto the statue. It quickly merged into the statue and disappeared. In the next moment, Tang Jing clearly sensed that Qi Yu's blood had seeped into the statue and met Fushi's blood. Qi Yu's blood flew out from his body. His senses were connected to Qi Yu's blood. Qi Yu's blood was equivalent to his eyes, allowing him to see the inside of the statue. As soon as the 2 streams of blood met, there was no need for Tang Jing to guide them. They were like 2 enemies that could not tolerate each other. They fiercely collided and attacked each other. What are you doing? The Emperor of Heaven was imprisoned in the statue and knew all of this like the back of his hand. He was overwhelmed with shock. He would never have dreamed of such a scene. Tang Jing said indifferently, "Don't dawdle. When Fushi's blood is suppressed, take the opportunity to merge with the statue. If you miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, you won't have another one in the future." The Emperor of Heaven's heart trembled. He did not dare to ask any more questions, nor did he dare to dawdle. He hurriedly made full preparations. The 2 streams of blood fought back and forth. One moment the east wind suppressed the west wind, and the next moment the west wind suppressed the east wind. However, Fushi's blood had nourished the statue for so many years, so it had lost a lot of its power. In the end, Fushi's blood was unable to withstand the continuous attacks of Qi Yu's blood and gradually showed signs of decline. The Emperor of Heaven acted according to the situation. He had been waiting for a heaven-sent opportunity, so he immediately took action. His soul quickly merged with his body, and there was no more rebound from Fushi's blood. The Emperor of Heaven was overjoyed. He did not dare to lower his guard and quickly consolidated this sign. The statue and Fushi's blood complemented each other. When the statue was merged with the Emperor of Heaven, it was equivalent to him taking it for himself. Fushi's blood was also greatly affected and its power was sharply reduced. Qi Yu's blood took advantage of the situation and crazily attacked Fushi's blood. Fushi's blood quickly retreated and tried to escape, but it was immediately surrounded by Qi Yu's blood. There was no way to escape. Qi Yu's blood came with great momentum and swallowed Fushi's blood. The 2 streams of blood merged together and their power was great. So, a bright drop of blood flew out from the statue. This was the result of the fusion of the 2 streams of blood. Tang Jing stared at this drop of blood and felt a surge of energy from it. It far surpassed Qi Yu's blood. After all, this was the result of the fusion of the 2 streams of blood. The blood flew straight towards Tang Jing, giving him a fright. Before he could dodge, the blood flew into his heart. Boom! The blood returned to Qi Yu's heart, but in the next second, a surge of energy exploded. It was like an atomic bomb had been thrown into a lake. His body immediately became abnormal. Ah dash, he groaned. He was really hurt by this sudden change, but he still gritted his teeth and endured it. He hurriedly circulated his energy, and all kinds of divine abilities began to circulate on their own. The energy was immediately pacified, and it was no longer a great flood. Instead, it became a small stream that flowed along his 8 extraordinary meridians and turned into pure true chi. He could no longer control whether the Emperor of Heaven could completely merge with the statue. Therefore he simply closed his eyes and immersed his mind completely into his body. There was more and more vital chi. It was simply rising crazily. One had to know that he was originally at the 7th stage of the Mahayana realm. The amount of vital chi stored in his body was unimaginable. However, his vital chi was still rising crazily, which was enough to show the huge energy of Fushi's blood. Chapter 17-16. The others were astonished to see Tang Zheng's transformation. Feng Shishir was concerned about Tang Zheng and wanted to ask about it, but she was stopped by the Empyrean fairy. Don't disturb him. His true chi is changing rapidly and might change. Once these words were spoken, everyone could not be clearer. They were pleasantly surprised as they stared at Tang Zheng with burning eyes. They already understood that his realm would most likely change again. Everyone's eyes were filled with anticipation. Of course, the Empyrean fairy's gaze never left the statue. She wondered if her father's soul had fused with the statue. Suddenly, the statue's eyes shone with a certain radiance and vitality. The Empyrean fairy's eyes lit up and her heart surged. She shouted excitedly, "Father, is that you?" The statue suddenly replied, "It's me." Well, the Empyrean fairy's little heart felt like it was about to explode. She was bursting with joy as she flew towards the statue and cheered, "Father, you've succeeded. You've succeeded." At this moment she was no longer the icy Empyrean fairy. Instead she had become a sincere daughter. The statue lowered its head. It was no longer a lifeless statue. The statue had already fused with the Emperor of Heaven's soul. This was the Emperor of Heaven. The Emperor of Heaven lovingly stroked his daughter's hair and said, "Yao, father has finally succeeded." The Empyrean fairy cried tears of joy. This journey had been too difficult. The ups and downs were truly torturous. The Empyrean fairy nodded repeatedly and said, "Father, your daughter will never be separated from you again." The Emperor of Heaven nodded with a gratified smile. "Your father will definitely protect you well and won't let you come to any harm." The others were pleasantly surprised to see this scene. What the Heavenly Emperor was unable to accomplish, he succeeded with Tang Zheng's help. This was enough to show how powerful Tang Zheng was. The others felt honored. Nana raised her tender face and said, "Big brother is so powerful. He's even more powerful than him." He pointed his little finger at the Emperor of Heaven. Feng Shishir's heart tightened. She knew a little about the Emperor of Heaven's temper. If Nana said that to him, he would probably be angry. Unexpectedly, the Emperor of Heaven didn't get angry. He laughed involuntarily and said, "Little girl, you're right. In some aspects, this kid is indeed very powerful. He has even surpassed me." Nana was beaming with joy as she proudly raised her head and said, "Of course he's my brother." Li Shaotian frowned and asked, "Senior Emperor of Heaven, is Tang Zheng's change good or bad?" The Emperor of Heaven's gaze fell on Tang Zheng. His expression became somewhat complicated as he sighed with emotion. This kid's luck is really enviable. But as soon as he said this, everyone understood the meaning behind his words. If even the Emperor of Heaven was envious, then Tang Zheng's change must be good. As expected, the Emperor of Heaven continued, "He has absorbed the ancestors' blood. The energy contained in this blood is beyond imagination. He is currently absorbing it bit by bit. Once he has completely absorbed it, there will definitely be a shocking change." Everyone suddenly understood and were happy for Tang Zheng. Li Shaotian's mouth also brimmed with a smile. But the Emperor of Heaven still didn't say one thing. He was very curious about the origin of the drop of blood that had swallowed Fushi's blood. What kind of blood was strong enough to swallow Fushi's blood? The Emperor of Heaven couldn't think of it, but he was sure that this was definitely not Tang Zheng's blood. With this kid's cultivation, it was impossible for him to do this. Roar. Suddenly, a deafening roar burst out from Tang Zheng's mouth. interrupting the Emperor of Heaven's thoughts and instantly attracting everyone's attention. A surge of energy burst out from Tang Zheng's body and rushed in all directions. Boom, boom, boom. With a series of loud sounds, rocks flew and the walls on all sides collapsed quickly. The others hurriedly used their cultivation to resist this shock wave. Tang Zheng's eyes were wide open and there was a flash of light in them. Seeing this scene of chaos, he stretched out his hand, and an invisible force enveloped this small space. All the flying rocks quieted down and gently fell to the ground. Everything was calm. Tang Zheng smiled embarrassedly and said, "Sorry, it was too loud." He didn't expect that the energy contained in Fushi's blood would be so huge. Once he absorbed it, his cultivation soared, and he actually directly rushed from the 7th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm to the 8th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. It seemed that there were only 2 realms, but the gap between them was a chasm. Only those who had experienced it would know how difficult it was to cross this chasm. Fushi's blood helped Tang Jing cross this chasm, which was something he didn't expect. The others stared at Tang Jing without blinking, and discovered that his aura had changed quite a bit. In their hearts, they understood that his cultivation had definitely increased. The Emperor of Heaven looked at Tang Jing with shining eyes and said, "Good boy, you actually broke through to the 8th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm." The Emperor of Heaven had experienced it before. Back then he had spent a lot of time and effort to reach this step, which was countless times more difficult than Tang Jing. Of course, the Emperor of Heaven was very clear that this was the effect of Fushi's blood. He couldn't help but feel a little envious. That was the most precious treasure of the Fushi clan, but it was obtained by Tang Jing. However, he did not have any complaints. Tang Jing only had this fortuitous encounter because he wanted to help him, and it was not like he was scheming. Therefore, this was completely Tang Zheng's opportunity. 8th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. The others cheered in surprise. This cultivation was unattainable for them, so they were all happy for Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed as he stared at the Emperor of Heaven thoughtfully. The Emperor of Heaven had seen through his cultivation with a single sentence. Didn't this mean that the Emperor of Heaven's cultivation was higher than his? 9th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. This thought immediately appeared in Tang Zheng's mind and his heart jumped. The Emperor of Heaven had this kind of cultivation after successfully returning to the sun, which was really shocking. After experiencing Tian Chanzi's rebirth, Tang Zheng was very clear that after a person was reborn, their cultivation would be greatly reduced compared to when they were alive. The Emperor of Heaven clearly didn't follow this rule, so why was this? Tang Zheng's gaze fell on the Emperor of Heaven's body. This body was no different from a real person, no longer a lifeless stone. A light flashed in Tang Zheng's mind and he suddenly understood. Fushi's statue. This must be because of Fushi's statue. Fushi's statue had been nourished by Fushi's blood for countless years and was far stronger than an ordinary body. The Emperor of Heaven's cultivation didn't decrease at all after fusing with this body, and it might even be beneficial to him. Congratulations, Senior. Not only did the fusion succeed, but your cultivation has also reached the 9th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. Tang Jing cupped his hands and sincerely congratulated. 9th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. The other souls were once again greatly shaken. An 8th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm and a 9th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm, which was almost the highest realm they knew, appeared in front of them. For a moment, everyone had mixed feelings and thousands of words, but they couldn't say it. The Emperor of Heaven smiled softly and said, "Kid, you have a good eye. You actually saw through my cultivation. Not simple." "Ah, same to you." Tang Jing also smiled without batting an eyelid. Rumble. Chapter 17:17. After the loud noise. "What's going on?" everyone exclaimed in shock. Could it be that my movement just now was too big? Tang Jing pondered. The Emperor of Heaven's expression suddenly changed and said, "This is because after I fused with the ancestor's statue, the gate of heaven has lost its foundation and is about to collapse." Everyone suddenly realized that the Fushi statue had such a great effect. Tang Jing was relieved. Fortunately, this was not caused by him. Otherwise, if he caused the Fushi clan's sacred ground to collapse, that would be a great sin. The Fushi statue was closely related to the gate of heaven, and was the foundation of the gate of heaven. After the Emperor of Heaven fused with the statue, the foundation of the gate of heaven no longer existed, and the gate of heaven was naturally difficult to protect. The few of them were nimble and quickly rushed out of the gate of heaven. The gate of heaven collapsed very quickly, but their speed was even faster. After they rushed out of the gate of heaven, a loud bang sounded, and the huge gate of heaven disappeared, turning into a pile of ruins. Everyone looked at this scene in shock and were speechless for a long time. The Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean Fairy's expressions were the most complicated. After all, the Emperor of Heaven had been here for so many years, and the Empyrean Fairy had also gone through the most dangerous period in the gate of heaven. Rumble. The gate of heaven was still collapsing, and the ruins quickly caved in as if there was a bottomless hole below, and the ruins had completely fallen into the hole. Suddenly the few of them found a clue. Tang Zheng and the Emperor of Heaven took the lead and flew to the top of the ruins, and as expected they saw a bottomless hole. Where does this bottomless hole lead to? This question involuntarily appeared in their minds, and they immediately looked at each other, seeing through each other's thoughts, and nodded slightly. The two of them decided to go down and investigate. The gate of heaven was originally very mysterious, and even the Emperor of Heaven might not know all the secrets. Now that such a bottomless hole had appeared, they naturally had to go in and investigate. The others also flew to the top of the bottomless hole, and found that all the ruins had disappeared, leaving only a bottomless hole. "We're going to go down and investigate," Tang Jing said. "I want to go too." "I want to go too." The few of them spoke in unison. No one was willing to fall behind. Moreover, they all had a strong sense of curiosity. Tang Jing was also worried that there would be more dangers on the island if they were left behind, so he agreed. Nana was the most excited. She almost jumped up and cheered, "Adventure, adventure." It was obvious that her personality was completely different from Mu Hongyan's. Perhaps it was because she had interacted with Tang Zheng and became a cultivator that her personality had undergone a tremendous change. He was not afraid of the heavens or the earth. He only wished for the world to be in chaos. Whoosh. Before she could finish her sentence, she was like a fairy that flew into a bottomless pit. "Be careful, Nana." Tang Jing quickly chased after her. They didn't know what was in the bottomless pit. What if there was danger? He didn't dare to take the risk. The others also quickly followed, and the large group flew into the depths of the bottomless pit. Tang Jing grabbed onto Nan Nan and kept her by his side. Nan Nan pouted her lips helplessly, but her pair of large eyes kept rolling around as she continuously looked around. Darkness gradually approached, and they couldn't see the path ahead clearly. A ball of heavenly fire appeared in front of them, illuminating the path ahead. True fire also lit up in front of the others, and it was quite different from heavenly fire. Even the Emperor of Heaven couldn't help but take a few more glances at the heavenly fire. The bottomless pit was getting deeper and deeper, and they couldn't remember how long they had been flying. "We're almost at the bottom." Fang Shishir sighed. Tang Jing pondered for a moment and shook his head slightly. He had been to the Earth's core and seen the fire Qilin, and it was completely different from this bottomless pit. The Earth's core was extremely hot, and the temperature was almost enough to melt people, but this bottomless pit clearly didn't have such a feeling. Instead, it was a constant temperature. This doesn't look like it's going to the Earth's core, but more like a passage. The Emperor of Heaven was very knowledgeable, and he came to this conclusion after observing for a while. "Passage? Where does it lead to?" "That I don't know." The Emperor of Heaven shook his head. Tang Jing stared straight at the bottomless pit and said, "Whether it's a passage or something else, there will always be an end. As long as we reach the end, everything will naturally come to light." Everyone nodded, and they urged their energy to increase their speed, whooshing forward. It was as if they had passed through the entire underground, but they didn't give up. Suddenly, a ball of weak light flickered. Although it was inconspicuous, it didn't escape their eyes. They were like people who had found an oasis in the desert, and their eyes lit up. "There's light, which means we're almost at the end." This discovery made everyone's spirits rise, and they once again increased their speed. As the saying goes, a mountain will run a horse to death. This weak light didn't seem to be far, but when they flew with all their might, they found that it was truly out of reach. After flying for a long time, they found that the light was gradually getting brighter, which meant that their guess was correct. There was indeed an end in front of them, but the end was still far away. The light gradually grew brighter and stronger, and even a gust of wind blew from the front. It was also very weak, but it was very clear when it blew on their skin. Suddenly, the few of them hit an invisible wall at the same time, and were all bounced back, retreating a large distance before stopping. The few of them were stunned and looked in front of them in disbelief. There was clearly light and wind there, so how did they get bounced back? Tang Zheng and the Emperor of Heaven both urged their energy, and let their divine sense extend out to explore the unknown area. Unexpectedly, a repulsive force appeared, blocking their divine sense. There was no way they could extend their divine sense. The two of them steeled their hearts, as they weren't people who gave up easily, and they actually went against this invisible wall. The power of their divine sense wasn't weak, and after spending a bit of effort, they were able to break through the invisible wall, and after passing through, everything suddenly became clear. The two of them opened their eyes wide in surprise. The light in front of them was very bright, and a cool breeze brushed past their faces. They came to another place where birds sang, flowers bloomed, and orioles flew. A clear and crystalline lake was in front of them, and not far away there was a large forest, as if it was a paradise. However, the two of them had used up a lot of their divine sense to penetrate the invisible wall, and there was no way to explore further areas. But this already proved that the Emperor of Heaven's guess was correct. This bottomless pit was indeed a passage to another place. But where exactly this place was, the two of them didn't know. The two of them hadn't seen this place in their memories, and it was really hard to imagine that there was such a wonderful place unknown to people in this world. They were preparing to withdraw their divine sense and think of a way to pass through the invisible wall with their physical bodies, when suddenly the sound of fighting came from afar, and it was very loud and very shocking. There's someone here. They're still fighting. Chapter 17-18. The battle was extremely intense. They didn't even need to look to know that it was a battle between experts. Tang Zheng and the Emperor of Heaven were both shocked. Just as they were about to investigate what was going on, they discovered that their divine sense was violently shaken and actually scattered. It turned out that after their divine sense passed through that invisible barrier, it was already extremely weak and couldn't hold on any longer. What's going on? The others didn't understand, but seeing the two's expressions greatly change, they hurriedly asked. Outside is another world. There are people fighting fiercely. We didn't even see who it was before our divine sense scattered, Tang Jing replied. Everyone suddenly understood, and their curiosity was immediately piqued. Could it be another space? Tang Jing was well versed in the laws of space. He clearly didn't feel like he had crossed into another space. He shook his head in denial. No, it's still the human world, just another place. The Emperor of Heaven's expression was grave. He couldn't hold back his curiosity and said, "Let's not dawdle. Let's investigate the situation first. It won't be too late to discuss it later." The two used their divine sense again. Their divine sense penetrated through the barrier and reached the other side. The first thing he saw was three figures flying back and forth, fighting until the sky was dark and the earth was dark. Raging waves had already been set off in the lake, which was extremely terrifying. Enchanting. The Emperor of Heaven recognized them at a glance. Tang Jing also recognized them. His divine sense firmly locked onto the two. He and the Emperor of Heaven never imagined that they would actually see these three people. The three people in the fierce battle were all experts, and they all felt the strange change at the same time. Unexpectedly, they all stopped attacking at the same time and looked around with a vigilant expression. "What's going on?" Yan Qingyi asked in a deep voice. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu also had the same question. They both felt that they were being locked onto by something. This feeling was extremely mysterious. Unless one's cultivation was profound, they wouldn't be able to sense it. Could it be that there were other people here? The two sides had stayed here for a long time. They had already lost count of how many battles they had fought. It was difficult to determine the victor, but they didn't sense anyone else. If there really was someone, then that person's cultivation would most likely be terrifying to the extreme. Even they had not discovered it. The expressions of the three of them became very vigilant, but there was not the slightest clue. Of course, they didn't know that this threat came from the smooth wordless wall. The two divine senses came from the wordless wall, and there were still a few people blocking behind the wordless wall. Back then, Yan Qingyi had come out from the wordless wall. The wordless wall was equivalent to a door. Different paths would eventually lead to this place. Looking at the three's reaction, the Emperor of Heaven and Tang Jing knew that the situation had become very urgent. No matter why these three people were here, there must be a great mystery behind it. Therefore they had to pass through that invisible barrier in order to find out the answer. The two's divine senses dissipated once again. The three of them felt their bodies relax. They no longer had the feeling of being locked on. However, they were not in a hurry to attack each other. Instead, they became very cautious. In the bottomless pit, Tang Jing and the Emperor of Heaven looked at each other. Their eyes became incomparably firm. Tang Jing said, "Is there any way to break through this invisible barrier? If you and I join hands, I don't believe that we can't break through." The Emperor of Heaven was very confident. This time they not only wanted to break through the barrier with their divine senses, but also wanted to pass through with their physical bodies. Tang Jing secretly nodded and gathered his strength. The two of them pushed forward with their palms at the same time. Their palms hit the invisible barrier, but they were not rebounded. This was because the two of them had already expected that there would be a rebound. Most of the rebound force was removed, so they were not sent flying. Heavenly Tao. The two of them looked at each other and said in unison as if they had a tacit understanding. In a flash, they had already seen the clues. Since Yan Qingyi was here, she must have used the Heavenly Tao to get here. They would naturally choose the Heavenly Tao. The two of them had a very deep understanding of the Heavenly Tao, especially the Emperor of Heaven. He had devoted almost his entire life to this. His understanding of the Heavenly Tao surpassed that of Tang Jing. When the two of them joined hands, the power was indeed different. A shock wave was transmitted from the barrier, and circles of ripples were undulating. The others looked at this scene dumbfoundedly. They were secretly delighted. They guessed that there would definitely be a breakthrough and they would be able to see another world soon. Everyone held their breaths and stared at the increasing number of ripples. Like the surface of a boiling lake, a crack was torn open. This crack spread rapidly. In a short while, it had already covered their eyes like a huge spider web. "It's here." Everyone understood tacitly and cried out inwardly. Boom. Sure enough, a loud noise sounded. This barrier shattered, breaking apart into pieces. Wow, Nana had already jumped up excitedly. She couldn't wait to rush over, but she was caught by the Empyrean fairy. Tang Jing and the Emperor of Heaven also relaxed. Looking at the shattered barrier, they knew that they had succeeded. This barrier could actually be destroyed by the Heavenly Tao. Just now, the two of them didn't think of using the Heavenly Tao. After seeing Yan Qingyi, they thought of this method. Then what was the connection between this place and the Heavenly Tao? Why did they need to use the Heavenly Tao to break the barrier? Huge question marks appeared one after another. The answer must be inside. Their eyes looked forward at the same time. Without the barrier, the light penetrating through the wordless wall became brighter and the wind became warmer. Let's go through," the Emperor of Heaven ordered. He waved his hand and rushed forward with his head held high. The others also hurriedly followed. Without the barrier, they passed through the wordless wall without any obstruction. Their eyes suddenly opened up and a warm wind brushed past their faces. They finally saw the blue sky and white clouds as well as that paradise-like place. However, in the next second, the Empyrean fairy and the others were caught off guard and were shocked by the figures of the three people in front of them. How could it be them? The three people in front of them also had the same question. Never in their wildest dreams did they think that they would meet this group of people and in this place too. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu's expressions were very complicated. They missed their son Tang Jing, but they had no choice but to cultivate here. In the future they would be able to solve problems for Tang Jing. They wanted to see Tang Jing even in their dreams, but at this moment, the real person was standing in front of them. For a moment, all kinds of feelings welled up in their hearts and they couldn't say a word. Yan Qingyi's reaction was not simple at all. Her eyes first locked onto Tang Jing. She had been chased by Tang Jing before and she had spent a lot of effort to escape. She never thought that the two of them would meet again here. The Heavenly Tao had always told her that the Heavenly Tao was dangerous, but she didn't completely understand where the danger came from. Was it Wu Junshan and Lan Yu? No. Through this period of battle and analysis, she was sure that the Heavenly Tao's so-called danger definitely didn't come from this couple. Then it could only come from Tang Jing. However, before Yan Qingyi could fully understand, her eyes were attracted by the Emperor of Heaven again. Her pupils contracted and she looked at the Emperor of Heaven's face in disbelief. Chapter 1719. Isn't this what the statue of Fuxi looks like? Yan Qingyi exclaimed in her heart. Could it be that Fuxi was resurrected? Fuxi was an ancient godlike figure. If he really was resurrected, how terrifying would his power be? Yan Qingyi could not imagine it. Even though she was arrogant and thought that no one could compare to her comprehension of the heavenly Tao, she was not arrogant enough to think that she could surpass Fuxi. After all, Fuxi was the first person in the world to comprehend the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao that he comprehended was definitely unimaginable. The Emperor of Heaven did not know what Yan Qingyi was thinking. Seeing her staring at him, the Emperor of Heaven said in a deep voice, "Yan Qingyi, long time no see." As soon as this was said, Yan Qingyi was stunned. This voice was too familiar, how could she forget it? In the past, she and the Emperor of Heaven shared a body, which was equivalent to one body. She naturally understood the Emperor of Heaven very well. "You are the Emperor of Heaven." Yan Qingyi pointed at him and exclaimed. At the same time, she secretly rejoiced that it was not Fuxi who was resurrected. Otherwise, things would be difficult. The Emperor of Heaven nodded and said, "It is me. Are you not happy to see an old friend?" "How could Yan Qingyi be happy?" she said with a complicated expression. "I really have to congratulate you. You have finally been reborn. Where did you get this body of yours?" "The ancestor statue in the gate of heaven." The Emperor of Heaven did not hide it and said directly, "You didn't expect this, right? You thought of a way to seal the gate of heaven, but we still broke through your seal in the end. Now that I think about it, you tried so hard to seal the gate of heaven. You said that it was to prevent outsiders from discovering it, but in reality, it was probably because you didn't want us to enter the gate of heaven again." Yan Qingyi's eyelids twitched as her thoughts were exposed by the Emperor of Heaven. Tang Jing had been staring at Yan Qingyi with furrowed brows. Seeing this scene, it seemed that what the Emperor of Heaven had said was true. She really did have such thoughts back then. "Yan Qingyi, you were so good at disguising yourself. We were all fooled by you." Tang Jing sighed. The corners of Yan Qingyi's mouth curled up into a proud smile as she said, "This is all thanks to your cooperation. If it wasn't for you guys, how could I have completed my transformation?" Of course, Tang Jing knew what her so-called transformation was. She must have comprehended the heavenly Tao. If he had not brought her into the gate of heaven, none of this would have happened. Therefore, this was all thanks to Tang Jing. But if one were to look deeper, this matter was actually linked. If Yan Qingyi had not predicted that they would reach the gate of heaven, Tang Jing would not have brought her there. Perhaps all of this was the will of the heavens. No, it was the heavenly Tao that chose her. Thinking about this, Tang Jing felt a chill down his spine. She kept saying that she represented the heavenly Tao and that it was the heavenly Tao that chose her. Could it be true? Tang Jing could not help but be confused. He and the Fu clan had both comprehended the heavenly Tao and even had the heavenly book. Why did the heavenly Tao choose her? What was the use of this? She gradually walked to the opposite side of Tang Jing. Could it be that the heavenly Tao also wanted to become the enemy of Tang Jing? This was what made Tang Jing's hair stand on end. It was precisely because he had comprehended the heavenly Tao that he deeply understood the power of the heavenly Tao. If the heavenly Tao chose to stand on the opposite side of him, he could not imagine what kind of danger he would face. Tang Jing's expression became especially serious. He asked, "What are you doing here?" Yan Qingyi was immensely proud of herself. Her gaze swept past the Emperor of Heaven, his daughter, and Tang Jing. She said, "You have all comprehended the heavenly Tao, but the heavenly Tao did not tell you why you are here. This means that you are the reason why the heavenly Tao is in danger." The heavenly Tao is in danger? These 4 words caused everyone's eyelids to twitch. The Emperor of Heaven impatiently asked, "What do you mean by this? Speak clearly." Yan Qingyi smiled and said, "Haven't I made myself clear enough? The heavenly Tao asked me to come here to solve the threat to the heavenly Tao. So these threats are you." Nonsense. The Emperor of Heaven was flustered and exasperated. "My Fu clan has been comprehending the heavenly Tao since the time of Fuxi's ancestor. How could we be the reason why the heavenly Tao is in danger? This is absolutely impossible. This is the truth. It is useless for you to argue. Do you think I will believe you just because you say that the heavenly Tao told you? You and I have shared the same body, so I understand you very well. Yan Qingyi, you think highly of yourself. Back then, you chose to comprehend the heavenly Tao instead of cultivating martial arts. That was because you were talented and intelligent. You also thought that you were extraordinary and thought that you were completely different from other ordinary people. Therefore, even if the Yen family has been a martial arts family for generations, you will never touch martial arts. You think that it is just a small trick in the bravery of ordinary people. The Emperor of Heaven said loudly. This was the first time he had heard of this point of view. It was refreshing. Yen Qingyi's expression changed slightly. It was obvious that her thoughts had been seen through. However, she immediately returned to normal and said, "It is not that I think highly of myself. It is because I originally had such talent. That is why the Heavenly Tao chose me and not you people who boast that you have comprehended the Heavenly Tao for many years. You people are all going against the Heavenly Tao. You will not have a good ending. You have a glib tongue. I don't want to argue with you. I let you escape last time. Let's see how you escape this time." Tang Jing did not want to waste any more words with her and decided to capture her first. Yen Qingyi was ready to go. Her gaze wandered around the group. She was very clear about the dangerous situation she was in. Even without Fushi, these people were enough to restrain her. Therefore she could not stay here for long. She was a little puzzled. Since the Heavenly Tao had sent her here, why did it not tell her what to do? Moreover, she was alone and weak. How could she defeat these people? The series of questions made her a little confused. However, the most important thing right now was to escape from danger. She saw Tang Zheng's figure rush over in a flash. Yen Qingyi's thoughts moved. With a rumble, a huge wave rose from the lake and blocked Tang Zheng. At the same time, she quickly retreated, preparing to escape. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu had fought with her countless times during this period of time. They had long since figured out her methods and were one step ahead of her to block her. Yen Qingyi saw the couple and a cold light flashed in her eyes. "You still want to block me?" Wu Junshan laughed. "We've fought for so long without a victor being decided. How can you leave so quickly?" Lan Yu's thoughts were more focused on her son. "Our son wants to capture you. As parents, of course we will help. Then die." Yen Qingyi waved her hand and released the power of the Heavenly Tao. An earth-shattering attack arrived in front of the couple. The two of them had already prepared for it. Their swords combined and sword light filled the sky, blocking the attack in an instant. With a rumble, Tang Jing broke a large hole in the huge wave. In the blink of an eye, he passed through the huge wave and arrived in front of Yen Qingyi. He reached out with his hand and a black hole appeared in front of him. A huge suction force immediately enveloped Yen Qingyi. Yen Qingyi hurriedly urged the Heavenly Tao to resist with all her might. She constantly struggled trying to break free from this suction force. Especially when she saw that huge black hole which was like the mouth of a murderer, she felt a strong sense of danger. Chapter 1720. Faster Thief. The Emperor of Heaven watched this scene without any help. He had already seen that Yen Qingyi was no match for Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was already at the 8th stage of the Mahayana realm, and Yen Qingyi was also at the Mahayana realm. Although her exact cultivation level could not be seen, she was definitely not comparable to Tang Zheng. In particular, Tang Zheng had used the sky swallowing technique right from the start. How could Yen Qingyi resist it? Yen Qingyi resisted with all her might, but she could not resist such a terrifying suction force. She flew toward Tang Zheng step by step. The others were very relieved to see this. Yen Qingyi thought highly of herself and she was finally going to suffer today. Yen Qingyi was angry and annoyed. It was clearly the Heavenly Tao that had ordered her to come here. Now that her life was at stake, the Heavenly Tao did not appear again. What was the Heavenly Tao's plan? Where did the Heavenly Tao place her? Yen Qingyi was confused. She could only resist instinctively, but she was powerless as she looked at the black hole getting closer and closer. Tang Zheng's lips curled into a smile. Of course, he would not repeat the same mistake as last time and let her escape. She had used a big move right from the start, making it impossible for her to resist or escape. Yen Qingyi flew in front of Tang Zheng and their eyes met. Yen Qingyi's eyes were full of arrogance and she was not convinced. Tang Zheng smiled and said, "You're not convinced, are you? Then resist. Let's see if you can escape from my sky swallowing technique." "Tang Zheng, you've violated the Heavenly Tao. The consequences are very serious," Yen Qingyi threatened. Tang Zheng did not mind and said, "I want to see how serious it is." He was about to stop the sky swallowing technique and then restrain Yen Qingyi. After all, he did not want to suck her into the black hole and turn her into pure energy. He still had a lot of use to him. However, a strange scene occurred. Before the black hole could completely disappear, Yan Qingyi's speed increased greatly. She flew into the black hole and disappeared. What? Tang Zheng's eyes widened. He didn't understand what was going on. He had already weakened the power of the sky swallowing technique, so why was she being sucked in again? It seemed like the sky swallowing technique had gone out of control. Impossible, such a situation had never happened before. The others also looked at Tang Zheng in surprise. After a while they reacted and asked in a daze, "You killed her just like that?" They all knew how powerful the sky swallowing skill was. Once they were sucked into that black hole, their lives would be lost. Tang Zheng shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "I never thought of killing her like that." "Then why did you suck her into the black hole?" "This." Tang Zheng stammered, "I don't know what happened either. I was clearly about to stop the sky swallowing technique, but she was caught off guard and was sucked in." The Emperor of Heaven's expression became serious. From Yan Qingyi's words and actions, she was not someone who would willingly walk into a trap. Since it was not Tang Zheng who took the initiative to suck her in, there was only one possibility. Yan Qingyi flew in of her own accord. However, this did not make sense. She was clearly seeking her own death. She was not crazy, so why would she do such a thing? The Emperor of Heaven thought hard and finally agreed with his own guess, saying, "Yan Qingyi must have gone in by herself." What? This news was even more shocking. Everyone's eyes seemed like they were about to burst out of their sockets. Yan Qingyi went in by herself? How was this possible? She was not an idiot, so how could she do such a stupid thing? Even Tang Zheng did not understand this point, but seeing the Emperor of Heaven speak with such certainty, his heart sank. He knew that the Emperor of Heaven must have made an important discovery. "Senior Emperor of Heaven, did you discover something?" The Emperor of Heaven muttered, "I know what kind of person she is very well. Sometimes she is even a little paranoid and crazy. Moreover, do you remember what she said just now? She came here on the orders of the Heavenly Tao, so she must have a purpose." The Emperor of Heaven paused. When the Heavenly Tao was mentioned, he had mixed feelings. "I have studied the Heavenly Tao for so many years, and I am very sure of one thing. The Heavenly Tao has its own subjective consciousness. The Heavenly Tao must have a purpose for ordering Yan Qingyi like this. The Heavenly Tao has its own subjective consciousness." This sentence shocked everyone. Even Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy were no exception, because they had never thought of this point. Only the Emperor of Heaven, who had been studying the Heavenly Tao all his life, would have such a deep and different understanding. "Senior, are you saying that the Heavenly Tao wants her to enter the black hole? What request does the Heavenly Tao have?" Tang Zheng asked nervously. The Emperor of Heaven looked at Tang Zheng thoughtfully and said meaningfully, "You have to give us an answer. What is so magical about this swallowing heaven technique?" Tang Zheng was shocked. The most magical thing about the swallowing heaven technique was that it created another world, the heaven realm. Did the Heavenly Tao come for the heaven realm? It couldn't be. The heaven realm was so secretive that only he knew about it. No one else knew about it, so how could the Heavenly Tao know about it? However, when he thought about how the Heavenly Tao was all-pervasive and mysterious, it might really know about it. Seeing that everyone was staring at him, Tang Zheng stammered and said, "This is a long story. I'll go check it out first." After saying that, his divine sense entered the heaven realm. The others didn't quite understand the meaning of this sentence, but seeing that he was deep in thought, they didn't disturb him and just looked at him quietly. Everyone guessed that Tang Zheng definitely had a secret about the swallowing heaven technique that no one knew about. Tang Zheng's divine sense had always been connected to the heaven realm. Every movement in the heaven realm would be automatically transmitted to him. However, when his divine sense entered the heaven realm, he immediately found an abnormal place. When other people were sucked into the black hole, they would instantly turn into energy and become nutrients for the heaven realm. Ever since Yan Qingyi was sucked into the black hole, the heaven realm didn't seem to have any new energy. He almost overlooked this point. What was going on? He didn't dare to let his guard down. His divine sense instantly enveloped the entire heaven realm. "Ah!" He almost cried out in alarm because he saw a person standing on the ground. Yan Qingyi. She was actually standing in the heaven realm unscathed and didn't turn into pure energy like the others. Only the exorcist mirror last time was like her and didn't turn into energy. Instead, it retained its original form. However, that was a magic treasure which was different from a real person. Even his own physical body had never really entered the heaven realm. There was another strange thing. Every movement in the heaven realm would be fed back to him, but such a living person standing in the heaven realm didn't give him any feedback. This was especially abnormal. If his divine sense hadn't entered the heaven realm, he probably wouldn't have noticed this. What was going on in the heaven realm? Could it be that something was wrong? However, other than Enchanting, every blade of grass, tree, and even the air was clearly fed back to his brain. It was no different from before. Tangjing was about to go crazy. He racked his brains but still couldn't understand the mystery. There was no time for him to think. He had to figure out Enchanting's intentions. Chapter 1721. When Enchanting came to the heaven realm, she was also very shocked. When previously, when she was getting closer and closer to the black hole, a thought suddenly came to her mind. Enter the black hole? This thought was very strange. She immediately guessed that it was related to the heavenly Tao. At this critical moment, unless the heavenly Tao appeared, she would not be able to guess the reason. She did not hesitate because she had absolute trust in the heavenly Tao. She gave up resisting. With a whoosh, she was sucked into the black hole. Even Tangjing was caught off guard. When she entered the black hole, her vision turned black. A huge tearing force acted on her body. She was almost torn apart. The heavenly Tao activated and protected her, preventing her from being torn apart. Then her eyes lit up. She found that she had come to a strange world. This world was somewhat desolate and there was no one. Except for a tree. It was because this tree was too eye-catching. Moreover, it seemed familiar. The tree of life. A light flashed in Enchanting's heart. He finally recognized it. She never dreamed that she would see a tree of life in the world behind the black hole. Also, why was there another world behind the black hole? Could it be that the heavenly Tao wanted her to give up resisting to reach this world? But what should she do next? What was the use of her coming here? He could not figure it out. She landed on the ground and looked up at the towering tree of life. It was not as tall as the tree of life in the human world, but it already gave people a feeling of looking up at a tall mountain. The tree of life emitted a surge of life force. The surrounding plants absorbed the life force as much as they wanted and were full of vitality. Just as she was thinking hard, a shout came from the sky like rolling thunder. Enchanting, what are you doing in the heaven realm? Enchanting was shocked. She quickly looked up but did not see Tangjing's figure. She could not help but be shocked. She asked, Tangjing, where is this place? Suddenly she remembered the two words heaven realm. She quickly asked, where is heaven realm? Tangjing was more shocked than Enchanting, because he had never seen a living thing pass through a black hole unscathed. Heaven realm is my world. You came to heaven realm, that is throwing yourself into a trap. Your world? Enchanting's eyes widened. What nonsense are you talking about? How could you have your own world? Haha, impossible. Isn't this the best proof? Enchanting was speechless. Could this be the true mystery of the sky-swallowing technique? It can actually create another world. She knew very well what this meant. Tangjing was equivalent to the god of this world. Vaguely, she seemed to understand the so-called crisis of the heavenly Tao. Probably came from this mysterious heaven realm. However, if she wanted to find Tangjing, she could have gone anywhere. Why did she have to come here? What was there to pay attention to? He could not figure it out. How did you enter the heaven realm and come out unscathed? Tangjing asked aggressively. He didn't act rashly. He wanted to figure out Enchanting's motive first. Ever since he saw Enchanting, everything was strange. He couldn't wait to figure out the mystery. Enchanting slyly narrowed her eyes and said, Didn't you say that this is your world? Don't tell me you don't know? Tangjing said in a deep voice, Don't play tricks with me. This is my world. I have the final say. If you don't listen to my orders, I have 1,000 ways to make you speak. Enchanting's heart trembled. She probed, Then what methods do you have? I would like to see them. Tangjing knew Enchanting's style of doing things. If he didn't use some methods, she might not speak the truth. Thus he said sternly, Enchanting, you asked for this. Don't blame me for not considering our past relationship. Enchanting was unmoved and said, Then hurry up and show me what you're capable of. She wasn't sure what she should do. The heavenly Tao didn't give any further instructions. Thus she took one step at a time. She wanted to see what Tang Jing would do. Whoosh! A gust of wind rose from the ground. Like a tornado it swept towards Yan Qingyi. Yan Qingyi retreated in a panic. She hurriedly circulated her energy to resist. She pushed forward with both hands. The surging energy shattered the tornado. Immediately after, the tornado turned into chains. Before she could react, she was bound by these chains. She struggled with all her might. With a bang, the chains broke. She soared into the air. Her hands came together and opened. A surge of energy attacked the Tree of Life. She was very clear about what the Tree of Life meant to a world. The Heavenly Tao didn't give her any instructions. She could only do things according to her own understanding. First, she had to destroy the Tree of Life. This would definitely affect the Heaven Realm. Seeing this scene, Tang Jing was shocked and angry. He roared, "Yan Qingyi, how dare you!" An invisible wall suddenly appeared in front of the Tree of Life and blocked this attack. Then Tang Jing moved his divine sense and tried to directly imprison Yan Qingyi. After all, he was the creator of the Heaven Realm. With just a thought, he could completely control everything in the Heaven Realm. This was a tried and tested move. He simply didn't want to tangle with Yan Qingyi and used this trump card. "What's going on?" Suddenly he exclaimed. This was because he couldn't imprison Yan Qingyi like he could with other things. Yan Qingyi was so slippery that he didn't know where to start. This unprecedented feeling caused his mind to be in chaos. He roared, "Yan Qingyi, how did you do all this?" Yan Qingyi's attack on the Tree of Life failed. She was ready to launch a second round of attacks. After hearing Tang Jing's question, she was confused. "What do you mean?" Tang Jing had an idea. He gritted his teeth. "This must be the Heavenly Tao's doing. I understand. It's the Heavenly Tao that let you enter the Heaven Realm. What is the Heavenly Tao trying to do?" Seeing that Tang Jing saw through the mystery, Yan Qingyi's expression changed slightly and said, "The Heavenly Tao's intentions are not something you can guess. This is the Heaven Realm. No matter what the Heavenly Tao's intentions are, it won't succeed. This is my world. I am the master." "That's not necessarily true." Yan Qingyi disagreed and launched a second round of attacks. Although Tang Jing couldn't directly control Yan Qingyi, his control over the other parts of the Heaven Realm was still not reduced. She couldn't hurt the Tree of Life at all. She could only waste her energy in vain. Yan Qingyi's power was getting weaker and weaker. Her attacks also gradually became smaller. Tang Jing discovered this and was overjoyed. Although he couldn't directly control her, as long as he waited until her power was exhausted, then he would have a way to control her and force her to speak. Yan Qingyi's heart gradually sank to the bottom. She knew that she would soon be completely defeated. Did the Heavenly Tao want her to fail? She couldn't guess, but she believed that the Heavenly Tao would not abandon her. There must be a way. Chapter 1722. Yan Qingyi had used up all of her energy. She was like an arrow at the end of its flight and her eyes had become dim. Seeing that he was about to control her, Tang Jing was secretly delighted. Suddenly, a consciousness came out from the depths of Yan Qingyi's brain. Yan Qingyi's consciousness actually became fuzzy and her eyes became sluggish. Tang Jing discovered the change in Yan Qingyi and his heart trembled. He had never seen Yan Qingyi like this before. Before he could figure it out, a light burst out from Yan Qingyi's eyes. She was once again filled with vitality. This was too mysterious. Hong. An extremely strong energy burst out from her body. This energy was much stronger than before and it even shocked Tang Jing. His attack was shattered by this energy. How could this be? Tang Jing did not expect this. Yan Qingyi was clearly an arrow at the end of its flight, so why did she suddenly erupt? "Yan Qingyi, how did you do it?" Tang Jing asked in a deep voice. "I am not Yan Qingyi." Yan Qingyi opened her mouth. Although her voice was still hers, her tone had completely changed. It was as if she was a completely different person. Tang Jing heard the difference and was shocked. How did Yan Qingyi become like this? It was as if she was a completely different person. "I am the Heavenly Tao." Yan Qingyi opened her mouth again. Tang Jing was so scared that he almost jumped out. He exclaimed, "What did you say?" Very surprised, right? After all, you also comprehended a part of the Heavenly Tao. Yan Qingyi said. Tang Jing was of course shocked. For a moment he did not know how to answer. It's a pity that you comprehended the heavenly Tao that Fuxi passed down to you and not the real heavenly Tao. Yan Qingyi snorted as if she was very disdainful. The heavenly Tao is the heavenly Tao. Is there any difference? Tang Jing finally recovered and asked in confusion. Oh, of course there's a difference. Fuxi is a traitor. He didn't follow my orders and even changed the heavenly Tao himself. Therefore what you all comprehend is a fake Tao. Fake Tao? Tang Jing was greatly shaken. He couldn't help but believe that it wasn't Yan Qingyi who was speaking but someone else. Perhaps it really was the so-called heavenly Tao. After all, the matter of Fuxi was too distant. Other than the person involved or the heavenly Tao, no one else knew about it. Even the Emperor of Heaven might not know. Back then I taught Fuxi the heavenly Tao, but who would have thought that he would betray me halfway through? He actually used a great divine ability to deceive the heavenly secrets, and passed it down from generation to generation, thinking of ways to deceive the heavenly secrets. The real heavenly Tao didn't appear and Fuxi's fake Tao prevailed. It's really ironic. Yan Qingyi said angrily. Tang Zheng's heart was already in a perilous situation. The amount of information contained in the other party's words was too much. His brain actually couldn't wrap itself around it, because this completely overturned his understanding. Fortunately, Yan Qingyi appeared. I taught her the real heavenly Tao and crippled Fuxi's fake Tao. Seeing that the plan was going smoothly and Fuxi's descendants were declining day by day, Fuxi's fake Tao was no longer obvious. I never thought that another great Tao would appear in this world and threaten the heavenly Tao. After Yan Qingyi finished speaking, she looked around with a deep gaze and said, "Today I finally saw this great Tao that appeared out of nowhere." Tang Zheng's heart moved. He seemed to have realized what the other party was talking about. Could it be the great Tao of the heaven realm? Was there a great Tao in the heaven realm? Tang Jing didn't know. Because as the creator of the heaven realm he didn't know. What is the great Tao that appeared out of nowhere that you spoke of? Tang Jing asked curiously. The Tao of the heaven realm that you speak of. Does the heaven realm have its own Tao? Tang Jing was flabbergasted. Of course it does. Every world has its own Tao and the heaven realm is no exception. It's just that the heaven realm isn't perfect yet and the great Tao isn't obvious. That's why you, the creator, didn't notice it. But why would the heaven realm's Tao threaten your existence? Tang Jing asked puzzledly. Yan Qingyi snorted and said, when another world appears in one world, the Tao of the two worlds will definitely fight and determine the winner. Your heaven realm appeared in the human world. The Tao of the heaven realm and the Tao of the human world will naturally fight against each other. In the end, only one of them will remain. Could it be that we can't tolerate each other? Tang Jing suddenly asked. Yan Qingyi laughed wildly. Tolerate each other, huh? Do you think this is playing house? There can only be one great Tao in this world and it can only be my Tao of the heavens. Tang Jing curled his lips and disagreed. Fortunately, I discovered your Tao of the heaven realm first and killed it when it just sprouted. Then there's nothing that can threaten me. Yan Qingyi said proudly. Tang Jing suddenly realized that the Tao of the heavens had this idea. But why did the Tao of the heavens choose this place to act? After all, the heaven realm had appeared for a long time. Why didn't the Tao of the heavens make a move before? When Tang Jing raised this question, Yan Qingyi said non-stop, how could it be so easy to make a move in other places? Do you know where this place is? Where is this place? The birthplace of this world. The human world originated from here. Whether it's me, the Tao of the heaven realm, or your Tao of the heaven realm, it will be very weak here. That's why I can more smoothly kill your Tao of the heaven realm. Yan Qingyi said. What? The birthplace of the world? Tang Jing had never heard of such a statement and was stunned again. Every word that Yan Qingyi said could be said to be shocking. Although Tang Jing could not completely understand the mystery, he understood one thing. This place was extraordinary and could affect the so-called Great Tao. The Tao of the heavens used this point to smoothly kill the Tao of the heaven realm. Another thing proved this point. Previously, Tang Jing could not sense the existence of Yan Qingyi, which meant that the operation of the heaven realm was not as smooth as before. This must be because the Tao of the heaven realm was affected by the suppression. Tang Jing knew that he was facing the biggest crisis in history. Moreover, even if there were other experts around him, they could not help him at all. In this war he could only rely on himself. His opponent was the illusory and incomparably powerful Tao of the heavens. Did he have a chance to win? In the past he could always be full of confidence and turn danger into safety. Now, even though he had reached the 8th stage of the Mahayana realm, he did not have much confidence. To others, just thinking about fighting against the brilliant Tao of the heavens was enough to make them tremble in fear and retreat. Even so, Tang Jing was not scared away. He mustered up his courage and said, "I don't know how much credibility your words have, but if you want to destroy my heaven realm, I will definitely not agree. Do you really think that with your current cultivation you can fight against me? You really don't know the power of the Tao of the heavens. A firefly dares to compete with the sun and the moon. It's ridiculous," Yan Qingyi said disdainfully. Chapter 1723. Yan Qingyi had transformed into the heavenly Tao. Her every move had a different style. Her face was calm as she walked towards the tree of life step by step. Obviously, she was aiming for the tree of life. The tree of life was the foundation of the heaven realm. Only by destroying the tree of life could the heavenly Tao be destroyed. The heavenly Tao's goal was very accurate. Tang Zheng's heart trembled as he shouted, "Stop!" He couldn't wait any longer and took the lead. With just a thought, the air in the heaven realm trembled. Light flashed around the tree of life out of thin air, flowing with brilliant colors, turning into a protective shield. Boom! The protective shield descended from the sky, completely enveloping the tree of life, not giving the enemy a chance to take advantage of it. Yan Qingyi's eyelids twitched. Her fingers moved gently and the aura of heaven and earth changed. It was actually stirred up by her. A white lightning bolt descended from the sky and landed on the protective shield. The protective shield trembled violently, but it didn't collapse. Lightning. Tang Jing trembled. His consciousness noticed the violent fluctuations just now. The enemy was extraordinary. She could even mobilize the energy of the heaven realm for her own use. Previously, Tang Jing thought that once the other party entered the heaven realm, she would be a turtle in a jar and would be at his mercy. He never expected that the other party's strength was so strong that it was unexpected. Even so, what waves can you stir up? Tang Jing snorted coldly. A bolt of lightning descended from the sky. This was the lightning used by Tang Jing. In the heaven realm, wind, fire, thunder, and lightning were all under his control. The power of this lightning was no weaker than that of the heavenly Tao. It descended from the sky and completely enveloped Yan Qingyi, but her expression didn't change at all. The lightning was about to hit her. Suddenly, her body became blurry. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared without a trace. The lightning struck the ground, creating a hole the size of a football field. It was unknown if it hit Yan Qingyi. Tang Jing wasn't sure, but he didn't sense where Yan Qingyi was. Yan Qingyi seemed to have really disappeared from the heaven realm. Is this an illusion? No, this is definitely not an illusion. In the heaven realm, no illusion can escape my fiery eyes of gold. This must be some other mystique. Immediately, he was perturbed and at a loss for what to do. Heavenly Tao, come out. Tang Jing let out a deafening roar. In a corner of the heaven realm, the air fluctuated slightly. Yan Qingyi's figure appeared out of thin air again. Are you looking for me? Yan Qingyi asked with a faint smile. Tang Jing asked, how did you do all this? Yan Qingyi laughed loudly. Don't think that you are the only master in the heaven realm. It won't be easy for you to deal with me. My goal is very simple. Yan Qingyi pointed at the tree of life as she spoke. As long as I destroy the tree of life, the so-called Tao of the heavenly realm will be like a castle in the air. It will definitely collapse. There will only be one heavenly Tao left in this world, and that is naturally me. Yan Qingyi made up her mind. Tang Jing shivered. His guess was right. The heavenly Tao's goal was indeed the tree of life. There was no doubt about the value of this towering tree. It was related to the rise and fall of the heaven realm. In your dreams, Tang Jing said fiercely. Before he finished speaking, a gust of wind swept up and engulfed Yan Qingyi. However, Yan Qingyi's figure disappeared again. Where is she? Tang Jing was caught off guard. Yan Qingyi's reaction was not slow at all. This attack still missed. Whoosh whoosh. In a corner of the heaven realm, the air fluctuated slightly. Yan Qingyi appeared again. A ray of light burst out from her hand and directly attacked the tree of life. You dare! Tang Jing roared. He did not have time to counterattack. Boom! A loud sound shook the heavens and the earth. The light shield actually cracked inch by inch. The tree of life was completely exposed in front of Enchanting. Tang Zheng's face turned pale. Only he knew how strong the protective measures he used were. However, even so, these protective measures were useless. He immediately counterattacked. However, a shock wave appeared from Enchanting's hand first. It went straight forward and attacked the tree of life. Careful! Tang Zheng anxiously roared. He had been unable to control the tree of life. Although he tried his best to cast a spell to remedy the situation, he was still half a beat too slow. Seeing that the shock wave was about to hit the tree of life, a soft light rose from the tree of life. This light was not dazzling. It was like the sun in spring, warm and gentle. However, its power was even stronger than the scorching sun in summer. Wherever the light passed, everything changed. It became incomparably calm. The roaring wind disappeared as if it had never appeared. The roaring shockwave was annihilated without a trace. The attack was no longer there. The Tree of Life's counterattack was too fast and too powerful. Enchanting also seemed to be caught off guard. When she saw that her attack had been completely nullified, she was shocked. She realized the danger and wanted to retreat quickly. However, it was too late. The light completely enveloped her. Her delicate body trembled and froze in mid-air. Tang Zheng was stunned. The Tree of Life's counterattack was beyond his imagination. It turned out that the Tree of Life was so powerful. Let's see how you can escape. Tang Zheng felt extremely satisfied. All of his divine sense instantly locked onto Enchanting, not giving her any chance to escape. The light gradually dissipated. Enchanting fell from mid-air to the ground. Her entire body was locked onto by Tang Zheng's divine sense. It was as if there were invisible shackles on her body. She seemed to have woken up from a dream. She kept struggling and roared, "What's going on?" It turned out that even she herself did not know why the Tree of Life's counterattack was so powerful. It was not that the Heavenly Tao did not understand the Tree of Life. It was precisely because the Heavenly Tao knew enough that it targeted the Tree of Life. In her understanding, the Tree of Life should not have such a powerful counterattack ability. Could actually resist such a terrifying attack. How did the Tree of Life do it? Could it be that the Tree of Life in this heaven realm was different from the Tree of Life in the human world? She was startled by her own guess. If that was really the case, then many of the things she had originally believed in would undergo earth-shattering changes, and her seemingly perfect plan would be for naught. In fact, her guess was right. Everything in the heaven realm was very different from the human world, especially the Tree of Life. Although they were both trees of life, they were actually completely different. This Tree of Life had many unique characteristics. For example, this powerful attack ability. It was not always passive and could even counterattack. This was enough to protect herself. Although Tang Zheng did not understand all the details, he could see some clues from Enchanting's reaction. The way he looked at the Tree of Life also changed. In fact, he had a deep relationship with the Tree of Life in the human world. Back then, the government's endless research on the Tree of Life had also hurt the Tree of Life. However, the Tree of Life did not counterattack. Therefore, he set up a defensive formation to protect the Tree of Life. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.